thinking about putting a wood stove in there, Kenny.
In here?
Mhm.
That'd be a good thing.
I thought so.
Yeah, who's gonna get the wood?
Yeah.
You got a window you can run the pipe out?
Well, we'll have to roll that thing up. Do that or cut a hole through it.
Yeah, there you go. Cut a hole through it, there you go.
I think it was Thursday, 35 below, 4,000 people southeast of Calico without juice for 7 hours.
Yeah.
Really?
I see on Facebook, some of these people are in the county are without heat. Ran out of propane or no firewood or something.
West End had a lot of frozen wells. Ours froze, our pressure tank froze.
Really? Oh, wow.
Is it out in the pump house or is that too cold?
It's in a culvert
Oh,
in
yeah.
the ground.
No, yeah.
But we have a well house on top of it that we put there 2 years ago, and apparently it has a little too much gap.
Uh-huh.
So
So the pressure tank's down in the hole? Really? Boy, that's, yeah.
I've never seen anything like it either.
All right.
Little heat tape.
All right, so we're here at 9 o'clock, and we're kind of following up on Mr. Burley and Peck's questions on how things operate and how things can improve regarding the departments at the courthouse.
You know, thank you guys for having us back. Couple things I want to reiterate, Don called me after our last meeting to ask whether or not we were involved, with Lance's agenda. We did Lance. Came into the public comment right at the end of our session here. And I just want to reiterate, and we've been very clear in 2 letters, that we're here for our own specific reasons. We're not here for any other agendas, just to see what we can do to help this county out and point out the things that we see that the county might be missing. And if there's a way to help, that's what it's all about. So I want you to understand that we're not here with any hidden agendas. So, with that being said, I do have a question on the agenda thing, because at our last meeting, I had to fill out this form, which is the first time I've ever done that, which I don't have any problem with. I think it's probably a good thing. But I noticed that up until last week, we hadn't been following through with policy as far as everybody doing that. And so I just want to make sure, or ask the question, is that going to be policy that everybody fill out this form now going forward? And if so, well, go ahead.
Well, Ken, if you would share with us who didn't have to fill it out, because, we are in transition and it's possible someone got missed, but I think that the new commissioner's assistant is pretty astute to that and has had everyone fill it out. I could be wrong, but.
Well, I watched the December 9th video, and Wally asked to be on the agenda, and you got the book out and put him on the agenda right on the video, and it's like,
Oh, no, I put it in my calendar that we would be adding him, he has an agenda item, so I have him on a Monday so that he fills out a form for a Tuesday to get on the agenda.
okay.
But I like to put it in my book, okay, you're telling me you're going to do this, so when can I expect to have that done?
Okay.
And that's what I put
So
in my.
they as well, anybody that comes to this meeting is gonna fill out this form, is that correct?
That is correct,
And has that been happening?
for a long time.
Well, okay.
Is that form available online for the public to retrieve?
Actually, if you call Renee because you want to be on the agenda, she will send that fillable PDF right out.
So it's
to you.
not on the county website?
It's not on the website, and we are having a lot of difficulty right now with the website. But if you call Renee, she'll email it to you.
Maybe that should be put on in the text of the website then, if you're having problems with links, because
It's not.
this is something that was brand new to many of us recently, that there was a form. Perhaps that form could be available to the public.
I think that's a really good idea, and I think our website people, they're working really hard. They're having a hard time putting things on there right now. We have a very old.
GIS?
No, that is our website people. They're out of Butte,
Well,
and so they're working to do that.
not to interrupt here, but I think we have the floor.
You do,
And I think that's public comment.
you do. You have the floor, absolutely.
Thank you. And so, getting back to our comments, so who decides who gets on the agenda? Does everybody get on the agenda? And what happens if you run out of time in the course of the day? Does the meeting run over?
So, as the chair, then I get to decide if, something's on the agenda or not, or if we're gonna proceed. And so I'll usually see, they'll send out, Dawn and now it's Renee will send out kind of, this is what it looks like, this is what I've received for of interest of wanting to be on the agenda. And I'll say, if it doesn't look clear enough, I'll say, can you change that wording so that not only do I know, but the public knows, rather than just say,
Sure.
signing form 116 for the county attorney's office, it says, signing form 116 regarding dog ordinance or regarding whatever, so that we all can have a better understanding. So I will make those remarks and changes. If there's something that's like, well, what the heck is this on there for? I don't think, we try to make it so that almost anybody that wants to come and talk can. I don't think we've ever really rejected anything. If we have, because we want everybody to be able to come and be open, so. But that's kind of what it does, is just after it comes out to me that these are the people that want to talk, and if it's clear enough what the subject matter is, then we'll just put it out there. But,
Okay.
but the thing about the forum, I think that was Lori that started that, right? Because normally people would come in, like you said, and just say, hey, can I come in? And somebody would write it down.
Yeah.
And then, did somebody one time kind of use, we didn't know who they were or what they were going to talk about, so then Lori wanted the forum so there'd be a little bit more full awareness of what was going to happen in the meeting.
Right, and it took a while, that was a transition also, because it wasn't always used, but it's been used pretty regularly for quite a
Okay.
while.
Okay.
Would I say it never has slipped past? No, but it has been used for quite some time now.
Okay. So are these, going back to what Roman just said, are they like time dated? So that somebody comes in here, you have 2 days prior to the start of this meeting to have your agenda items up and posted.
Right, 48 hours.
It actually says 2 days in the statute.
Yeah.
It says 48 hours, but 2 days is 48
Yeah.
hours, I guess. So Willie and I and the other people in this room come in and hand you an agenda item on the 11th hour, and then you run out of time or you have to get to it or whatever. Do you date those and time those so that you can say, well, this guy was here, he's gonna be on the agenda next, that type of
You mean if we have a day that's so full that we have to like prioritize? Is that
Yeah.
what you mean? Oh, we've never had that happen, but I
It's
guess
been-
we do have a timestamp for so when people bring them in, if that became an issue, then we would be able to track who came in first, but right now, we've been
Lots
pretty.
of companies do that, just to protect themselves, and I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be beneficial, because somebody may say, well, I have mine in there, but I didn't get on the agenda.
Oh.
Whatever, so.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that having ever happened, because we,
Not that it wouldn't one day in the future, but we've
Right.
only been able to accommodate all the requests. For,
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, again, we're here to make suggestions and
Yeah.
ask questions.
And if we get as busy as Bozeman,
And then,
that'll
and
go there.
then those forms go to the HR person?
commissioner's assistant, you know, commissioner's assistant, she's taking those in as the commissioner's assistant, but she is also HR.
Okay, that was my next question. Who is HR? The commissioner's assistant?
Yes,
Okay.
but, so she has 2 separate roles, 3 actually, but she's a commissioner's assistant, and she then is also HR. They're
Okay.
2 separate jobs.
To make it enough work for the work week, rather just have one position. So she does multiple safety
Coordinator
HR, commission assistant,
and Board of Health.
and board of health assistant.
Okay. So with that being said, Dawn and I have had this discussion before. Are there job descriptions for those jobs so that
Yes,
everybody
yes.
knows exactly what those are entailed, and those are posted somewhere where we can take?
They're not posted, they're in the folder of when a person comes in and gets a job, that's the first thing we have them do is look over the job description. And then we ask them if they can fulfill those essential functions with or without accommodations. They reply, we document, and it goes in their folder that this is your job description. Department head has the job description, everybody knows who's involved in that job, what needs to be done.
All right, and then who keeps the minutes of the meeting? Was the assistant do
The
that?
commissioner's assistant.
Okay, and those are posted in the office, or they're recorded in the office somewhere?
They get posted on the website, and they are posted, once they are official, they go up to the clerk and recorder's office, and she, I suppose date stamps those, I don't know, but they're in several places.
Okay,
Yeah, There's an official book up there for minutes going all the way back to 19 whatever.
Yeah, okay.
You could also go to the commissioner's office, the commissioner assistant's office, and ask her, because she keeps a copy, they're electronic and they're hard copy in her folders, so they're accessible to anyone at any time.
Okay. Answers that question. Well, I think I was moving on to some other things. And the roads, I'd like to go back to that a little bit here. When we started talking about that, you presented us with this list of this Schedule A, and we determined that, you know, that the original agreement was done 57 years ago. And it doesn't sound like we're able to put our hands on that yet.
No.
And so we don't really know what we have, but if you go on this Schedule A document here, it defines the Mineral County jurisdiction on roads, and it defines the Forest Service jurisdiction on roads, and it defines Forest Service, I believe it says Forest Service jurisdiction with county maintenance or something to that effect. Commensurate with use, I think it says. So, with that being said, a couple of things, and I'll let Willie jump in here a little bit too, is that these roads haven't been bladed by the Forest Service for as long as I can remember. And according to this, they're supposed to commensurate with use. And Don and I took a tour when she first became commissioner up Flat Creek just to look at the road that's up there. Commensurate with route use, you have one family that lives on the upper end of that thing. But yet they've been doing that mine reclamation up there for how many years? And they've never had a blade on that road. Well, the day after you were up there, or the day before, I happened to meet Darren Haskins up there, and he's doing some of the work up there. And he said, I'm gonna get with the road foreman and see if I can't get this road bladed, unbeknownst to him, but it's really not the county's responsibility to go blade that road, it's the Forest Service's responsibility to blade that road. So how do we accomplish that? How do we get that back into what the document says? Because if you add up the number of miles on this road, it's significant. With the counties maintaining these roads, Forest Service hauls logs up and down them, they do their Forest Service maintenance, they do their trail crews, they do their tree planting, they do all these things, and they don't contribute anything to that. And I think it's just because that's just the way it's been for years, but that's not good enough. I mean, if we're talking about how can we save money in that county, that's huge. So, well, we're out blading many miles of road and maintaining it and trying to get ditch cleaned, and ditch cleaning is expensive, but we should be putting that on the Forest Service to be doing some of this stuff.
And I would like to let you know that we did invite the road foreman to come, but because of the weather, he was
Sure.
unable to. But he really is the person, I think, that would have the best answers to this, along
I
with
think
the.
so too, yeah.
Yeah, so he was again invited, as he was at your last meeting, but the weather just
He
didn't
said
allow
if we did
him.
have a question that we needed answered, he probably could answer the phone. He has Bluetooth in his truck, so.
Yeah, well, I guess the question was why haven't we approached the Forest Service and had them do some of this work? And, you know, and I did ask that question, the answer was, it's just always been that way. And it says commensurate with use. So we're assuming that the county uses it as well as the Forest Service, which isn't always true. And so, you guys have been around for a while, know that, you know, somebody needs to be involved in the scoping of these timber sales or these mine projects or whatever's going on out there to get our name in the hat, to get these roads maintained and ditches cleaned right from the get-go and not wait till after the fact and go in and try to collect money. It's too late then. We need to try and get it done now so the money's appropriated ahead of time. And so, getting back to the road foreman, I know you're in the process of writing a job description for him. I don't know how in the hell he can possibly do that kind of work and still run a road grader and drive a plow truck. So, I think that's something that needs to be addressed by the commission. How are we gonna do this going forward? Because we're, in my opinion, throwing a lot of money away every day. So,
The Forester, we used to have a pretty good relationship with old Thompson Falls kid,
Nate Kegel?
Nate Kegel, yeah. and, you know, he was involved with the Forest Service roads and some of the projects. And then, of course, we have the local ranger, which seems to be a new one every year around here. But whenever we have talked about things like that with them, of course, they always say, we don't have the funding, we don't have the funding.
That's why it needs to be done in scoping, and you know that. We need to get in from on the ground level, and the money's appropriated there. That's why I say it's too late if we wait until the project's already designed and a decision is made.
And then the money.
Then it's too late, the money's not there. That's like you approving a budget and I want to put something in it, there's no money to put in. So somebody has to do that. Either the commissioners have to do it, the resource manager has to do it, or the county or someone like that. You know, the road foreman does it, but it needs to be somebody with some experience and the scoping. So, something for you guys to think about. I'd like to, you know, put that as a question, how we're gonna address that going forward, because it's significant. And then, with that being said, the other thing on roads, in looking at the budget in last year, I believe it was, we appropriated $1 million in what we call pass-through money that, as I understand it, and help me out here if I'm wrong, the Forest Service, because of the bidding process is so cumbersome for them, has asked the county to fund these projects that they have so that they can get it done. And the thought process is that it generates local work. And so we put the money in our budget, we fund the project. When the project's complete, the Forest Service administers it, by the way, and when the project's complete, they reimburse us. Is that how that system works?
Yes.
Okay. So, with that being said, I've mentioned this to a couple of you guys, that it seems to me like we should be involved in that process of which project needs picked. I think it was last year, they gravelled the Cedar Creek Road from News up and put berms on the outside edge. And a local contractor got some of that work, and that was all good and fine. But the county gained nothing from that, not one thing. And so couldn't we be involved in picking a project that says, let's pick a road, Sawmill Gulch, pick a road, Flat Creek, Dry Creek, one of those roads that are Forest Service and the county use, and say, we'll put $1 million up, but we want our project to be the Dry Creek Road. We want culverts in it, we want you to do the same thing you're gonna do on Cedar Creek, but that benefits both of us, because we're putting the money up. And so, again, we both benefit from it. So that's something that I'd like to see us move forward with, because that's huge. I mean, that, for example, if you took, I think that one project was close to $500,000 on Cedar Creek Road. You put $500,000 into Flat Creek, and maybe you got to pave the road, you don't have to deal with them for a long, long time. And so then that goes back to the maintenance thing with the pavement is commensurate with use. So if it gets tore up with logging coming down there, somebody's involved with the scoping process, and the Forest Service is going to maintain that road and make sure. For example, out where we live, we didn't do that on the Quartz Road, and when they logged the fire up, was it 17?
18 when they logged
18.
Sunrise Fire.
They tore that road all to hell, and with the logging. And we have two options: shut them down on county roads, and you can do that, or let them go, and then we repair it on our nickel. That shouldn't happen. The Forest Service should be forced to do that if those logging trucks tear that road up. In talking with Jason, he claims that they tell him that that's what we get paid SRS money for, is those roads, but I'm hearing that may not be true. So again, that's something that needs to be,
Hang on while I mute this thing.
something that needs to be investigated.
So I have a question with that. Just so I understand, I assume you'll probably learn some of this
in the coming weeks as well, but, so is that a contract that the county, like the one we did this year was $400 and some thousand for some trails or something, bridges? And was that a county contract? Was that awarded through the county?
The Hiawatha Trail, the bridges on Hiawatha, you guys just rejected the bid here a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. But, so regarding that,
My question is, would that be a county contract, or is it a Forest Service contract?
yeah,
So didn't we call it a memorandum of understanding with the Forest Service? I think that's how that money passes through, is under MOU.
So, my question with all that, then, is there any exposure to the county if something happens? I mean, if there's really no money that comes to the county for doing that, it just gets work done and it provides possibly.
it expedites their federal contract process.
Right. But is there any exposure to the county if somebody, I don't know which bridge it is, but somebody falls off a bridge and whatever happens, or it doesn't matter, anything's happened up there? Is the county, has any exposure to that kind of stuff? And my question is, if we do that, anybody else that does something similar like that with the county keeps like 15% for administration, insurance, and those issues that might come up. And Ken brought it up, so I wanted to clarify, because I believe that's something that would probably fall under my umbrella when we get out there. And I didn't know, I just thought it was appropriate right now to ask what kind of a contract that is.
Well, it could, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It could become a big issue if somebody falls off one of the bridges. In a lawsuit, they're gonna name everybody's names attached to this thing. And, if, another thing we need to know, which I believe it probably is hard money, and those are, come under the FAR Act, Federal Acquisition Requirements, is that correct? Mike, I saw you.
Yes.
Yeah. Isn't there something in the FAR clauses that has a clause in there for administrative allowances?
It does not to exceed. So, and I think that works for contractors, because it's federal acquisition requirements. But the Forest Service administration fees, I would be real interested to see what they have as part of this projects.
Yeah.
So what is their administration fee, and if the county is part of the projects, shouldn't they get the general conditions normally for insurance and what, and everything is at least 15 to 20%? So if you got $1 million you're gonna send out, shouldn't the county get that percentage for administration also on the project? Or should it, instead of
I
it
don't
all
think we're
going, all
we're not
administration be under the Forest Service?
Julie, have Nate here too.
Yes.
We don't administer it. I mean, after we kind of, go ahead, Wally.
It depends on the deal. So here's the question, when you write the contract, if we want to control the bid, we get the administration fee, but we also get the liability. Which is, if we control who does the bid, who gets the bid, who does the prospectus, who does whatever else, when we do that, we agree to hold the Forest Service, the Fish and Game, and whoever is irresponsible from any liability or whatever that goes with the program. So the one we did yesterday was the one over the pit toilets and whatever else at the trailhead up in St. Regis, which is fine. We administer, we get 7% administration fee. We do the rest of it. We had to revise the language to get the terms right because they had the grant amount wrong. It was a 10% match, but they had it written as a 50% match. I said, no, it's 10%. Our share is $4,800, not $48,000. So we whacked $43,000 off what we had to pay that fast. But when we do the admin fee, we get 7% of the $95,000 bid. But we have to hold them harmless, so it depends on what the deal says. So every deal is different. We cannot do scoping unless the county signs on as a cooperator with the Forest Service. And I've been trying to get this county to do that for 24 years. Forms are in my desk drawer upstairs. Beaverhead did it, Madison did it, Lincoln did it. They all did great success. That's one thing I talked to Willie about is are you willing to do this a different way than you've done it? And like I told the stock growers, if your grazing permit program works so well, tell me what happened to all the cows on the Lewis and Clark National Forest that were there 30 years ago. And the same thing I said to one of the guys who logged here for years, if it works so well how you did it, where the hell are your sawmills? And boy, does it get quiet that fast, because it did not work. The different way to do it is to cooperate, which means when you do that, we are in the scoping meeting. You're dead right, Ken. We get to do it. We get to pick the priorities. We get to provide the input. And that is not a public process. Scoping is federally exempt under FOIA. Subpart 4DI of the federal law exempts scoping from the Freedom of Information Act, specifically. So the agency can have a frank conversation amongst its experts over what they're going to do. So the only way we get to be there is as a cooperator. And that changes the whole playing field. Suddenly we get to set the priorities, help do it, change the program around. That's the key.
Then why are we doing it?
Because I've had 4 weeks to get you to do it. Vinley, Logie, and I have been trying for 24 years to get this county to do it, and they would not do it.
Well,
So finally, there's a willingness now, so we'll do it. And the Forest Service is quite keen to do it, because they get major brownie points. Every time a Forest Service office, regional, Lolo, whatever else, can get a cooperator, they're thrilled. That goes in their list, a little checklist of great things we did. We had a cooperator in Mineral County. By the way, Lake County did it over the Columbia River Plan. Everything from Portland to Canada. The only county that cooperated with 5 federal agencies to do the plan for the whole Columbia Basin was Lake County. Why didn't they breach the dams on the Snake River? Because
well,
Lake
that's
County
exactly
said-
why we're here, Wally, is because those things have been overlooked for years, and that's why we're trying to point that out.
Right.
We need to move forward and be progressive.
And
That's
that's good to
exactly
hear.
why.
So is the
we-
7% set by the
No,
government?
it depends by agreement with which program you get the money from. Some are 11, some are 7, some are 15, a lot of 10. The other part is you can kind of negotiate the number too. If it's something we're gonna have, like if we need our road supervisor to spend time to make sure the gravel's the right gravel, or we have to hire an engineer to make there's enough road base in it, that's gonna cost us more, we can negotiate the percentage for admin then. We can say we're gonna have to have our road super spend 2 days of their time getting this right. That's worth X thousand dollars, so add this to the 7%. So we can make the deal. That's the point. You have it. And it's delightful that finally the county's willing to say, let's try it the other way. That's great, and I dug the files out.
Good.
And the first county that did it in America was Beaverhead, the second was Madison, and the county attorney who did it and wrote the book just happened to be
Well, you can
me.
talk about industry all you want as far as putting your head in the sand, but I can tell you, I've been here a lot longer than your 24 years, and we fought this process a hell of a lot longer than that, and we've not been able to get this county to be involved until now. That's why we're sitting here today.
That's good.
Yeah.
We will get it there. It's a good
Well,
thing
it needs to
do
be
it.
get there soon, and there's no reason we can't now. The projects are being put up this winter for next summer's work, so some decisions need to be made, and we need to be moving forward with that process right
The
now.
bigger one is not that. The bigger one is the rewrite of the Lone National Forest Plan.
That's huge too, that's a whole separate issue.
But that's the one to be in first, because that sets the whole playing field for 20 years.
Yeah, but I don't think you can set them aside. I mean, we got these projects going on every day, we've got to be involved in them every day as well as working on the forest plan.
Right, that's the whole key.
Thank you. So, back to the commissioners. It's
Yeah,
on your
so-
plate now.
But T-Bone called me and I asked him that question about, after we award the bid, what's the role in it? And he said that the Forest Service, you know, Nate Kegel and Jared Koskela, they're the engineers, they engineer the project, and then they oversee it and run it after we award the bid. He said we've never had one with a bridge involved in it before, so I guess, but he didn't really fully understand if we're really liable or not, but he just also followed up saying that we do get a lot of money infused into the county through the Forest Service monies And it does help our local contractors, but, you know, I guess we could cease and desist if we didn't wanna participate, and nobody would be.
Oh, I don't think that's the
I
point
think it's a
here.
great program, I don't think we wanna cease
Oh,
and
yeah,
desist.
okay.
No, that's not
I
our
just-
idea. Our idea is how we get some money out of it. And going back to what you just said, Wally, we got 7% of the one we just did or something. That's apparently a relatively new process that you started with these bids.
This is a grant that came from Fish, Wildlife and Parks for
Okay.
a facility in St. Regis. But we got the agreement, man, there were some typos in it, there were some mistakes we had to correct, but we did it, and they're willing to do it, and we're
Okay.
happy to.
Good. So where is our liability? Because you mentioned if we award the bid, if we do any administration, then we become part of the liability. Well, we do award the bid.
So if we award the bids and pick the bids, we have to hold them harmless from any problems that come from the project. So that's what it says right in the agreement, so then if we do that, we just advise Mako, we're working on this project, as a pit toilet for a county park, which is the park there, that's fine. So that's no different than the liability we have anyway. So instead of us using taxpayer dollars to put in the right trailhead, we're using half, well, 90% Fish, Wildlife and Parks state money to put it in. So that doesn't change what our liability circumstance is if we do the work versus them doing the work. If we were doing it, we'd have it anyway. So we haven't changed the playing field, but that's the part to look at. We don't want to take on more liability. If it wasn't a county park, if it wasn't a county facility, if it wasn't a county thing, we're adding that to our list. We're taking on like the Hoodoo Pass Visitor Center. No, that's not a thing we want to take on as a liability. Just the existing stuff. So when you read the agreement, the commissioners end up signing in the end, that's the part you have to look at, is what are we taking on?
Okay, so the thing you just mentioned was a park in St. Regis?
Yeah, it's the trailhead, pit trail, yeah, for St. Regis.
For St. Regis. And that's exactly what we're talking about. The kind of projects that we should be seeing are projects that benefit our county. And that's one of them. You know, gravel in the Cedar Creek Road, as we've done in the past, does nothing for Mineral County. And so, I don't know if you were here when I made the comment about maybe Flat Creek or Dry Creek or Sawmill Gulch or one of those. You know, why not pick one of those projects that's really beneficial to us, it saves us some money?
Now, that's what you do in the process of Stone.
I agree, that's what I said
But
early
that's
on.
also why, right, the fire management plan we're talking about, counties have no jurisdiction to write a fire plan. They have jurisdiction to write a growth policy, and the fire plan is a component of the growth policy that makes it legal. The resource use plan a county has, we have no authority under state law to do that, but we have authority to write a growth policy, and the resource use component of the growth policy is legal. So that's how you do it. So it's about marketing. It's the same plan, but one is not a standalone deal. It's part of the bigger document, and that makes it legal.
So what you're saying right now is that we don't have an option to help pick or choose the way we spend our money?
Yeah, we do. The option we choose is, one, we have to get the Forest Service to elect to give us cooperator status, and two, like the fire plan, we just have to plug the language into it, make the revisions.
Because that's huge to Mineral County.
It's
No.
huge to all rural counties in Montana. It's
Yeah,
a
but we're
huge
talking
deal.
specifically about Mineral County right now.
But
And
the nice part is we wrote the template on somebody else's back. So Libby
so
wrote
we
the
just have to
template.
apply it.
We just have to follow the rules. We
Okay.
did the template elsewhere, so we don't have to invent the wheel here. We have the wheel, which is great. That's a whole lot easier.
That's encouraging. And we can move forward and maybe get some of these projects headed in our direction.
And, you know, the example of Cedar Creek is another illustrated point of how there are a lot of folks that don't live here that control what happens here in terms of, I mean, that whole Trout Unlimited and all those folks wanting to change the road for the bull trout or whatever. That was a Forest Service project, probably pushed by environmental groups, and the Forest Service allowed it. We didn't.
I
And
know
then- and
because
so
we
that-
didn't, because we didn't participate.
Yeah, and they don't let, we scream and yell, I've gone to those meetings with AFRC and Missoula and stuff, and they listen, but they're not very good at responding. But, so in the end, then they do this world road work, yeah, it benefited a local contractor who did all the dirt work and the new road, but there are people who live at Oregon Creek above that, so when they did do this gravel project, not only it finally improved the road that they tore up, they didn't need tearing up to begin with, but I mean, there was some benefit to those folks like Carl Metcalf and those that live up there. But again, Ken, sometimes the Forest Service and other environmental groups, they bring in things and ideas whether it be the Fish or the Wolf or the Bear or the St. Joe Road, and we're just pulling our hair out, and I don't know how we make them listen better or cooperate with us, because that's been my frustration the whole time with only 7% private land and everything else is controlled by them.
How about pulling our funds?
Pardon me?
How about saying we don't support it financially?
Then they would say, you guys are looking to get Taurus in the mouth, how about no more PILT, how about no more SRF? I mean, they do give us a lot.
Seriously?
Well, that's kind of what they look at
That's kind
quietly
of what they
saying,
look at. They can't just arbitrarily pull your PILT and your SRS
wow,
over a road project in Cedar Creek. I don't think so.
No.
Here's the game changer you need to know. We are not cheating, and I'm not proposing that you cheat, and I never have. Here's the skinny. Cooperator status is reserved to state agencies, local governments, state government districts, like the Conservation District can be a cooperator, it's a governmental entity, Indian tribes, and states. You cannot have that status if you're an NGO, a benefit group, a special interest group, or whatever else. It's limited to only the governmental entities. So when I say if we play as a cooperator, you're playing in a field that nobody else can be in, because you as a local government qualify, the rest of them do not. So that's why it gives us tremendous horsepower, tremendous ability to affect it. Because we are not cheating, we're not breaking the rules. What we're doing is punching a ticket that we can punch that nobody else has the right to. So that's why it's a delightful breath of fresh air that we're willing to punch the ticket, and that's the advantage of Willie's position. Unlike having to find a person to do that, which is what Beaverhead had to do, we had to find two separate ones. It was hard. So the fact we have somebody who can means we're in a much better position to start than the other counties who did it were, because they were not able to do, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. It had never been done. So we wrote the book, and we did it. And having had great success on the Kootenai Forest with it subsequently, and the Beaverhead, and the BLM, it works. We have a huge advantage down the road, but we're not cheating. We're not doing something we shouldn't. Like when Roman says, well, they listen to Trout Unlimited or whatever else, to you and those guys don't get a voice in scoping. We do as a local government. The other groups do not, and we're not cheating. We're doing it per what the law says we can do. That's the difference.
So basically what you just said, well, if understood, is we have a lot more horsepower than those environmental groups that he's talking about. We just have to utilize it.
Yeah, we have tremendous horsepower that none of them have. We just wouldn't do it.
So how do you do the scoping? What's the
What you
next
do
step?
first is you do the agreement with the Forest Service that says you're a cooperator, and you request to be on the scoping meeting, and they do it.
I thought we did that years ago.
yeah, we've been trying to do that, Wally.
No, you coordinated. You did not cooperate. You listened to the Wyoming lawyers. And what coordination says is, yeah, the feds will tell you. Yeah, they tell you this is what we're gonna do. Fine, and that's what they did. That was the standard. There's a huge debate between three words. What's coordinate, what's cooperate, what's collaborate? Completely different federal meaning. They are totally different in terms of the legal result of which one you get. That's what we did, is we took the wrong turn, so this is a chance to take the right turn. That's the difference.
So where are we at in that process now, Walt?
What I need to do is, I talked to the Forest Service's two people when they were at your meeting last week, Roman. I think you were not here.
I was in Bozeman.
You were in Bozeman, but I think Dwayne was here and Dawn was here, and we talked to the two Forest Service people last week, and they were quite keen, so I dug out my files that have got the agreements in it. I just have to get them rewritten to say Mineral County instead of Beaverhead County, and to say U.S. Forest Service Office, et cetera, and get those done. Then we get them to their lawyers at the Office of the General Counsel, which is Jody Miller in Missoula. They bless them, and then the Forest Service signs them, and so do we. And we're off.
Perfect.
That's the start.
Yeah, and I don't think the Forest Service necessarily would want our county to pull our SRS, but just every year, SRS and PILT is a big fight at the federal level, Ken, with the eastern congressional people wondering how come we're handing all this money out to Oregon and Montana. So I'm just saying that when they hear people talk about counties like us, they think that maybe we're being unappreciative if we keep asking for more, but
And if you want to know more about it, one of Roman's friends is the national expert on PILT funding. He used to be the MACO president.
Todd Devlin.
Todd Devlin is from Prairie County, Montana. he lives in Terry, but he is the national expert on PILT funding. So I am sure, Todd, for a favor from whoever, would do it by Zoom call with us or whatever else, but he is a guru of PILT. So in terms of where it works, Ken, if you want to get a bunch of information, Todd is the guy to talk to, because he is more than overly good. People call him from all over the country about PILT stuff. He's just a rancher in Terry who's got a damn good head on his shoulders, and he knows PILT upside down. He is great. So he'll help us if we need the help, for sure.
That's great.
So if they move forward with this cooperative, is it something that would have to be reviewed by county people? Does it have to go to public review before?
Just
Are you
the
going to
commissioners,
consult
no, just
with
the,
county on
yeah,
the
it's just that,
Yeah.
the major, yeah.
I do want to give you a quick update on the fair. You had asked about the fair,
Sure.
and I want to let you know that we have had growth every year. I have 2019, 20, 21, 22, not 20 because that was COVID. I do have the numbers from the Lions Club, so the rodeo has gone up from 150 general admission seats to 2022 Friday night 850 and Saturday night 1220 compared to 2021 Friday night rodeo 600, Saturday night 1200. So we are seeing a steady increase in attendance and participation. I also have a 5-year report here for you from 4-H, so you can see the numbers of participants and how that has grown over 5 years. So it looks like we're doing good with growth with the fair and rodeo.
Good, so I think the question that we had is it funded well enough to do what we need to do to maintain and
Well,
move forward?
I think my answer would be yes, only because we're seeing those numbers in growth. Do you have opinions on
I
that?
think I'd like to give the fair more money, but we just don't have more money to give them. But I think the fair deserves more attention and funding for running the great show that they do.
Well, Roman, that's one of the things that really is a question for us is, I'm kind of speaking for Willie here, is that, that's what we hear all the time is we're a poor county. We're here to try and point out some ways, and I think we just stumbled onto a great one here with what Wally just told us. We just have to have that status in place, and it sounds like it's being worked on. We can move forward, you guys have to decide, who's gonna do that, and all of a sudden, there's more money comes available for the benefit of this county. May not be cash money, maybe in-kind money, but it's still money that benefits the county, which is gonna fall down to the road crew, till it falls down to other things that maybe, who knows where that budget money goes. But instead of just handing the Forest Service up to $1 million, we get some benefit out of it. So,
One other thing, just back up a little bit. I didn't hear the conversation, but Ken said that, Haskins said he was gonna get a hold of the county to blade that road while they're up there doing the work for the Forest Service. And two things with that. Number one, certainly is not the county's responsibility. That should have been bid in Darren's
The Flat Creek example.
yeah, for the Flat Creek, the Great Flat Creek. That should be part of his bid. We did that work for years, and we never came to the county to do anything. That's always should be part of that contractor's bid to maintain his roads. And if we just ran up there and did that because he asked, that's dollars that we don't need to spend. If we believe the road needs to be bladed for the residents, and he's tearing it up, then we should go to the county, or to the Forest Service, and we should say, you guys need to blade this road. But just to go up and blade the road is, in my estimation, is just a waste of time and money that should be somebody else's responsibility. And so I'm just kind of adding to the things that we're talking about here, how we can get more dollars into the county and keep more of our dollars available to do other things. And You know, I hope we didn't blade that road, but I expect we probably did. But those are things that somebody should be involved in to help Jason decide if that's something that we should be doing. You know, you can't just come through the gate and ask Jason to grade a road if it's not a county road without having you guys involved in the decision about whether you should or should not grade that road. And provide some supporting information for that. So I guess that's my thought, and it's certainly something that I can do in the role here as a natural resource advisor, is I can work through those kinds of things and make sure that the Forest Service is pulling their weight on these things. So anyway, enough said on that. I just want to make sure that there should be another way to get that done than having the county go up and take care of a road that the forest is actually tearing up, so.
Yeah, and there's an educational thing that goes along with that for a road foreman. He's not aware of all the stuff we're talking about here. He's not aware of the scoping process, I'm sure. He's not aware of the commensurate with use that we're talking about here.
Yeah, I had a question for you about Flat Creek Road. That the one that goes, the agreement there, if the Forest Service is beating the crap out of the road, how many times have you had to blade the road because of how that poor condition is? And,
You tear up the road and fix it.
do you know about approximately how much that man hours are when you blade that road cost? Couple of years ago. So a total of,
Yes.
how often you do it normally? Okay. And so the last time you did it extra was a couple of years ago when they hauled logs off it? Have you got any requests recently with the activity of, you know, the cleanup up there?
While they're talking, would I be able to, I just have a few other reports to give you. Would it be okay with you if we just?
Sure.
Okay, so I wanted to let you know that there is no one
Okay.
paid to organize or promote the fair. We have a secretary who is paid, but she's not part of the fair, but Mary Jo Berry is the secretary. And Ken Quick gets a little bit
pick
of
up
money
going to
for
the trucks that are
fairground
parked above.
maintenance. But as far as do
Okay.
we pay anyone to
So
promote
no,
and
so nobody made a
organize? No.
special request
Helping
this
the
year
county
to
become
do
more
that road?
involved.
You
As
want
I
to
told you
sometime
at our last
you
meeting,
do
I
it?
am on the board.
No?
And I too feel that the fair is such an important part of our whole
Mhm.
county that I will be a strong advocate in
Okay.
whatever they
All right,
are
thanks
doing.
much. Bye.
And then I have other things. I was just gonna go ahead, okay, health department, we talked about, they're the
Well, let's
greatest,
go back to the fair.
Okay.
You know, I just, it's encouraging to hear that the numbers are growing,
yes,
and that's a good thing, but it wasn't, just a few years ago, they didn't have enough money to hire a band or something, and they were looking for some funding for that, and so I'm not quite sure how that all works. If there's a budget item and it's just a shortfall, because, you know, we had Kelly Hughes here forever and ever and
Right.
ever and ever, and not anymore, and I don't know why that is, but,
I thought it was a booking problem.
I thought it was too,
Yeah,
because we
there
had to
could be.
change some dates.
He's starting to retire, he's cutting back.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think it was a funding issue, I think it was a booking.
Yep.
But if in fact we can't hire a good band, that's deterrent for a fair.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that's the factor, but I had heard that they were running short on money to hire a band.
Well, you know, we all know that what a great disappointment it is not to have Kelly Hughes.
Yeah.
And it did start out with, we had to change some fair dates one year, and so we couldn't get him with that change, but certainly something for us to keep looking into, and we all feel the importance of the fair, the rodeo, to the county. Hopefully, being on the board
Yeah.
will keep us
We
more
give them,
informed.
we give them as much money as we can, and then their board decides are they gonna hire just one good band, or are they gonna hire a good band and three other bands, you know, because they have more than just one musical
Right.
event, and then they decide how they're gonna spend the money in all the areas of their budget, and so
Well, let's get the Forest Service to blade the Flat Creek Road and we'll do that money to Fairport.
Yeah, so,
Well, too, you
Go
know,
ahead.
what we do in St. Regis, like with the flea market and stuff, when they're short of money, you know, no county money goes into that, but when they're short of money, they go out and they fundraise. And we encouraged the fair a couple of years ago, they were having troubles, and we encouraged them, and they did go out and fundraise. And maybe they need to do that more, you know, too.
That's certainly an outfit.
Yeah.
or put, you know, I thought maybe it'd be good if they wanted to sell some sponsor signs and put them
Yeah.
around, you know, the food vendors, you know, a sign that said such and such logging, and, you know, it was $100 or whatever, and then advertising. But, T-Bone said that on Flat Creek, they normally do that 2 times a year, probably spring and the fall, and it takes this grader operator about 2 hours to do it each time. And he said that, the only time he did it 2 extra times, so a total of 4, was a couple years ago when they were hauling logs out of there. But he said recently he hasn't gotten any requests to do it. And there, 3 weeks ago, they were going up there and doing some work on that reclamation, but all the trucks are parked above the county's maintenance portion, and the work that was being done, a couple guys would drive up in their pickups on the county road, get out, and they'd get in the heavier vehicles, and they were hauling their stuff, but they never came back onto county roads. All of the reclamation work is occurring on Forest Service Road, not the county portion. So he said the road hasn't been beat up, and there've been no requests this year for anything. He said, like you said, they only did that, drove up and down in the pickups for 3 weeks while they did some work up Flat Creek, but nothing substantial.
My question to that being a little bit facetious, how them trucks and those excavators all get there? They fly in there, they went up that county road.
Right,
So they're not going down it every day, but they're going down with heavy traffic, guaranteed.
yeah, but he
And so
said it
it's
wasn't
still-
detrimental to the road that he had to blade it any extra,
Have you driven it?
not recently.
Well, Don and I did.
Mm-hmm.
It needs attention. And it hasn't, from what you just said, been tended to since then,
Mhm.
and we needed it then. So it's been that way for how long we've been a commissioner. And so, how do we know, Mike just brought this up, how do we know it's not in that Forest Service contract for them to blade that road? Maintain,
Oh, the reclamation contract?
to maintain the road going in there. There's a lot of times on construction jobs that is
Part of the deal.
part of the deal. So, you know, those are all things that need investigation, but again, you got a road foreman that can't possibly look into those things or even understand what he's supposed to do. So, you know, it's a use on this road, and it says commensurate with use. You know, the pickups going up and down there, it's not like it just happened, it's a 3-week project. This next summer, it's gonna be full on up there. And for, I don't know how many years they've been doing that project. I bid on it years ago. So it's not something new. So that's just one example of what goes on these roads that are commensurate with use.
We had kind of
And that's the
similar-
agreement that you signed, so we should hold their feet to the fire and not defend them because they're only up there for 3 weeks.
I was just pointing out that had not been a request to
Okay.
the road, because there hasn't been substantial work to cause anybody to ask for it. Now, Wally.
There was a history piece on this, Roland. When the Forest Service planning process came down under the Flipco statute in 1983-84, what happened is the big green movement was the Forest Service is subsidizing the timber industry. And because you're subsidizing it, it's all BS, cut no trees, because it's subsidized, don't do that. So what the Forest Service had done to that point is, when you bid a timber sale, you also bid the repair and maintenance on the roadway. So when Dabco, ACM, Stimson, Champion, Intermountain, IMC, Missoula, when those guys all were bidding sales, they were bidding the maintenance on the road as part of the cost, so the price per thousand for the timber was less because they were paying the cost for the roads. Then because the green movement pushed so hard, the cost of the road stuff went off the deal. So that got eliminated from the contracts, got eliminated from the bids, and the concept was, we'll up the dollars per thousand for the timber, so it doesn't look like we're subsidizing anymore. So it became, how do you hide the illusion?
Right.
And that's what happened, so you know, And there's been a fair amount of kickback from 2003, 2004. That first got called on the Forest Service about it on the Beaverhead in 2003 over their forest plan revision in 0304. There also, the forest got sued in 84, 85 over the green growth numbers they used were Oregon's, not Montana's. So they had to straighten a whole bunch of stuff out to do it. So maybe now the forest would go back to the concept of if there's gravel needed for like the road, make that part of the bid for the timber sale. But they quit doing that in the 80s because there was so much pushback from the green side over the issue of subsidizing the timber industry, in quotes. That's what did it, which was tough. And they can bring it back and do that. If we requested it, they might be willing to do it. If we actually requested that be included as part of the bid let, I bet they'd do it.
Well, and I can't agree with all of that, Wally, because I was in the business till 2017, and I can tell you on the 12-mile road, we gravelled and bladed that whole thing all the way through there, clear to the county line. And there's such a thing as called stewardship sales, where that changes the perspective of that whole gamut. And so, though there are some avenues out there that get that work done, but you're absolutely right, that needs to happen when the timber sale is being put up.
Yeah.
And that gets back to this cooperator status, or what was the term you used?
It's a cooperator status, and that's the key.
Yeah,
So we don't just take the plan, we help make the plan. That's the difference.
yes,
You're a plan taker or you're a plan maker. And the plan maker is a lot more successful than the plan taker is. That's the difference.
While we have Wally here, would you mind if we jump to the hospital questions? Because it is so convoluted, I couldn't begin to explain that hospital, the buildings and the land in question. Would that be okay if we?
yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I'd like to know how that works.
Yes, so please, Wally, take the floor on this one.
After I talked to you on the phone Tuesday, I got the rest of that figured out. That was kind of a convoluted mess. And I talked to Doug Austin about some of the history of it too, because my dad's deceased, or he would have known it as well, but I know he worked on it then, but that's been 30 years ago, 25 years ago. So here was the scope. The piece of land that's on was the county's property. The county gave it to the hospital on the condition that if it ceased being used for that purpose, it reverted back to the county. And that was a fine way to do it. It's a right of reversion. So if you don't use it for a hospital medical anymore, it becomes the county's land. It comes back with the buildings, with the improvements, with the sewer, with everything else to the county. Then when they decided they needed to add on to the facility for an extended care or a nursing home facility, whatever you want to call the thing that was there, and they did some other stuff on the land too, they needed about 3.8 more acres. So what they did is they took the original legal description of 11.1 acres and they added another parcel to it, but then to have access to all the land back there, they also cut out a driveway, cut out a right-of-way 60 feet wide and some other things. So they added not a square, they added kind of a trapezoid to it on that end. When they did that, it was surveyed. This was done in 2012, 2011. And they surveyed the legal description, so instead of being an 11-acre parcel, they made it almost 15, it was like 14.2. When they did that, that was on the plat, but the name they put on the plat was Mineral Community Hospital, not the Mineral County Hospital District. So the name on the plat was not the name of the entity that was taking the property. And that was a mistake that was on the face of the plat of the certificate of survey. It was just an error. So everybody read this all these years. Then concurrently, we looked in the wrong names because the name on the plat was wrong. So Cleanne and I finally went through the whole list of all the stuff with the hospital's name on it. And we found, lo and behold, they did do the deed from Mineral County to the hospital district for that 3.82 acres with the same condition. It's all subject to a right of reversion. So the face of the plat shows Mineral Community Hospital. That entity does not exist. There is no such entity. The hospital district is the entity, but it was an error on the face of the plat, so we got that fixed. So the hospital has the almost 15-acre piece of land. And that is all subject to a right of reversion back to the county if they quit using it for those purposes.
So does that make it private then, that property, once you?
It does not pay taxes because it's a district, and as a district, it's a governmental entity. Its funding was raised by creating the district for the bond purposes to repay the village to pay it back. So it's not a private entity, it's a governmental entity like the conservation district is, although it's a hospital district. That's what it does. So it does not have a tax bill, it's exempted, it does not pay tax, but because it does not, it's for the public good, for the public benefit entity. It's like a road district exists to maintain the road. A fire district exists to maintain the fire trucks and the fire engines, like if you have the St. Regis Volunteer Fire District, Rural Fire District, whatever, that's what a rural fire district does. A hospital district's no different, it's just for a hospital purpose, not for fire protection, not for conservation, not for whatever. So we did it that way, that was the funding mechanism that got it done. And the name is right on the title now. And people did not realize, Roman, you were a commissioner then because you signed the plat.
Yeah.
I know you both did.
Yeah, because I thought it would go back to what's used for that, but then how does that work, Wally, when these other private companies ended up running the business of the hospital? Like, we had the Brim was over there. And
Right.
so what does that do with the ground they're operating on, which is a district?
The ground stayed in the name of the district. They never transferred from the district to the new entity. So the entity ran it in that sense. Like you could hire a contractor to build a road for the county. So if the county hires a road contractor, that doesn't change the ownership of the road. So they didn't change the ownership ever. I went back and checked on that too. So whoever quote administers it, for example, some of the old hospital districts got taken over by like St. Patrick's Hospital, which became Providence, became whatever. If they transfer the title, that did, but they never transferred that. In the whole piece, that was my first concern, was they had the 11 acres where they added the 3.9 acres to it. Is it subject to the same condition of reverter? If you don't use it for a hospital, it reverts to the county. But I found the stuff finally, and it does. So if they don't use it, it comes back to the county.
The assisted living they've abandoned, I don't know what they do with it.
They're using it for nurses' housing right now, and storage housing and other things for migrant nurses, as I call them. They're called rotating nurses properly, but I call them migrant nurses anyway. But they use it for those things, et cetera. That's what it's there for, yeah.
So ultimately, the county does own it when it's all said and done, like Jason's pickup. It's the county's, it's tax exempt, he doesn't pay taxes, doesn't pay license on it,
Right.
but it's the county, so that hospital
It
is.
belongs to the district, but the district gives it back if they quit using it for the hospital.
So,
And is the district the county?
The district's a separate governmental entity. It's created by a separate public referendum, separate decision by commissions and/or the public to do it. It's created that way as a separate entity, like the fire district can be the county fire district. It's not the county commissioners, it's a district.
But who's their governing board now? Is it the hospital's private board, or is there?
My understanding is the hospital district still exists and its governing board should be that district board. I didn't look up to see who's on that board. I could have, I didn't do that. I just was more concerned about tracing down the ownership and the legal descriptions, because the way the thing went, it was like, I will say honestly, I said, what the hell is this Mineral Community Hospital? I have no record of this. There's no deeds, there's no nothing. What did they do? It took a while to figure out it was a mistake on the plat. They just didn't look up the ownership right.
And MCH works both ways. MCH for Mineral County Hospital and the other name.
Yeah,
So this extra 4 acres they got, that's, I know the piece you're talking about.
it's on that end.
Yeah, that little triangle piece.
Yeah, it's,
Do they
yeah,
have to use that for a hospital?
or related.
use?
Yeah, it's for hospital-related medical,
Well,
yeah.
right now, it's not being used for anything.
It's being used for housing for their nurses who move in and out and
Or
storage
the
and
old,
stuff,
that
yeah.
part.
Yeah.
he's talking about the raw land on the east end.
Oh, the raw land is not, when you go down the road, there's a 60-foot road that goes down like this that we kept as the county's ownership. And then when you get to the end of the 3.8 acres, they added to the 11. From there on, that's all the county.
That's the
That
part
piece
that-
is pure county. That is not anything to do with the hospital district board.
Because that's
That
a
is
question
all the
everybody's
county.
had for a long time.
And that is all mineral counties.
Okay.
Commissioners own it for the county, commissioners can do what they want to do with it.
Good, thank you.
And the road.
It's just pretty skinny, yeah.
Yeah, it's a skinny road in, and then it's a long skinny piece. I was surprised they did that way, because there's two roads down there that are platted city streets that go to that piece, that long skinny piece that has two accesses there. And I couldn't understand why they kept a road on this end, and I thought maybe it was for sewer or water. I don't know. There was some reason, maybe you know, Roman or Dwayne, what it was, but whatever they did it, there had to be a reason. So if that answers your questions, that's the skinny.
Okay,
Thank you.
can
That,
we, oh, I'm sorry.
be interesting to know what the acreage is on that, because there's some ground there.
The one that remains the county ownership, yeah, I think
See, that,
5 or 7.
just to point out, that's exactly why we did this, because years ago I asked the same question, until today, we've never had an answer. So it's gotta be refreshing for you guys to know what you're going.
Yeah, to have Wally find out that NCH thing,
Yeah.
yeah.
I had to call Roman and say, you weren't really a commissioner in 2012, were you?
Yeah, I was newly elected, so I guess I really was not a commissioner.
He said chair. But yes, it was very interesting researching it, and we're very lucky that we have Wally, because it was so convoluted, I couldn't follow it.
And
So-
we had Tim Reed and we had Marsha Boris there who were reviewing it, you know, and I thought, wow, it's gonna help the hospital, but I'm pretty sure we maintain that right of, you know.
Yeah,
coming
the
back
reverse,
here.
what'd you call that? The
It's a right of reversion.
reversion,
Right of
the right of
reversion.
reversion, yep.
So Wally, I have a quick question for you, because I know that here in town, there are some, what do you call them, transient nurses or whatever they are,
Locum tenens.
that actually rent here in town.
Uh-huh.
And so do they rent from when they are put up in that other building that used to be the,
I don't know if they pay, I don't know what they do exactly, but the understanding I had from asking people up there is that's sometimes who stays there when they can't find rentals locally.
so I guess my question is that, well, I guess if you can't find rentals locally, that's one thing, but is that beneficial to the county? Are there better means for that building than occasional nurse staying there?
That would be a question to ask the hospital's board or the entity up there.
Aren't you on the board, Dawn?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Who's on the hospital board? Are you?
Yeah, I can tell you who's on the hospital board, if you wanna know that, we
No,
could.
are you on?
Are you on
Yes,
the hospital?
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, so I was gonna say to you before, you didn't get the board members, oh, I can tell you who's on the hospital board,
No, we're
but
asking.
yes, I am.
We're asking, is there a better use for that building than the occasional transient nurse staying there, where some of them actually rent here in town?
Mhm.
And some of them, does the hospital charge them to stay there? I understand the housing shortage thing, and there may be a reason for that, but that's an awful big building to just have one person in there occasionally.
I think it's a good question, I'm happy to find out about that.
Yeah, that-
We also have the problem with teachers and deputies.
yes, exactly.
We have been trying hard to get Alberton to commit with their sewer guys to let us put some duplexes in Alberton at the end of Thompson Meadows, the developer's game. We just need the sewer capacity to take the gray water. But if they'll do that, that solves the problem of having deputies living inside the fire department, fire hall and the extra rooms there, and then teachers can't find a place to live either. So your idea might be well asked, not just in terms of the nurses.
Oh, yeah.
It may also serve better for the
Sure,
other side.
absolutely, I think that's an excellent question.
Yeah, I
was
actually
very
spoke to
interested in
Ryan
that.
about the same thing, Funk, because he's struggling to find places for people to live as well, so, or maybe if it's, available, maybe the hospital district or the county get it back and refurbish it into apartments that benefit the county. So, but that is a determination, or is that a determination that the county commissioners can make and say, that really isn't what the intent of giving you that building was for. It was for a nursing home, and now you're using it for apartments. I mean, that takes some looking into,
The
but
question is it related to the medical provision of services or not? And it is. But the question is, if it's 2 out of 10, 2 out of 12, 2 out of 20, what percentage does it have to be to still be for medical? But it's a better thing to ask the question to the hospital district to find out really what's going on with it. I also think some of the facility that they use for their heating unit is on that too, that heats the hospital or whatever.
doesn't mean you could co-op the whole thing. Instead
That's a
of
possibility.
utilize it for maybe deputies and teachers and things of that nature as well. If it's not being totally utilized, maybe we should totally utilize it.
could be a question to ask them for sure.
Well, they're gonna be protective of that building, I
Yeah.
can tell you, so you're gonna have to,
Provide
through
some kind of,
Yep.
like get some statistics, how many people stay there, how often.
Sure, I'll get together with Wally and make sure that I have the right questions to ask.
Great.
And we'll get an answer from,
Hey, Dawn,
Yeah.
can I say something real quick?
Yes.
It's Willie, right?
Ken,
Ken, I'm sorry, Ken, I'm Sean, so my wife's a nurse up there, so I'll leave the hospital board to give the official answer. But unofficially, yeah, that's constantly in use by travel nurses. It's in their contract that they have a place to stay, or else the hospital could not be filled with nurses. So for instance, we've been here over 2.5 years, they are still short-staffed. They can't get nurses to come in, let alone say, hey, find the rental property too. We know how that goes for deputies, teachers, and all that. So it's constantly in use. It's also in use by the billing department. That's where they're actually located, inside of there, because they didn't have any space, I guess, in the renovation. So, I know there's a nurse that's been there for over a year, still trying to find property that's living in that, the ponderosa as they call it. So for billing and for the nurses' use, that's constantly in use.
okay. That may be the answer, but be worth looking at to make sure. Is it totally utilized, is it completely full?
From my understanding, yes, we've had to have one of the nurses stay at our home as she travels in because there's no room, and I hear it's not the best conditions either.
Well, that's,
So,
you know, maybe it needs refurbished for that.
sure.
Put your taxes on, let it,
yep, we will absolutely be looking into that and get you an answer.
Speaking of that,
Okay.
getting back to the hospital, Wally, who's eligible to put up a bond levy, ask for a levy?
The taxpayers.
Anybody?
The taxpayers have to vote to do it.
No, I know, but who has to request it to the commissioners?
Any taxpayers could do a petition and request it. Could be 10 people in a road district, 5% of, if 10% or 5% of the affected owners by the bond can request it. Some bonds the commissioners can do on their own. Commissioners can do a levy for judgment, commissioners can do a levy for purposes of roads, et cetera, within certain reasons, and that's where it goes. So
Health and
anybody can
welfare,
request it.
safety.
so
Yeah.
you're saying that a civilian could, he doesn't have to be someone on the hospital door to
No.
request it?
No. No, it doesn't mean you do it. There's certain guidelines of what percentage, like if you've got 1,000 acres that's gonna be taxed by this district, a certain percentage of the acreage has to request it. I think it's like 10%. So if 10% of the 1,000 acres request the bond, then you can decide to either do a vote on it to assess the bond for that amount. They changed those rules in the last legislative session, which really stunk, pardon me. Now, it used to be 50%. Now they have a protest provision that says to get a road district, you have to have 85% of the people request the district. And what it was is a whole lot of people at Big Sky, Flathead Lake, and Whitefish, who have a whole bunch of money, didn't want to have to pay for those districts one way or the other way, because their taxable value was so high with million-dollar houses that they changed the number it takes to get the district done, so they don't get subject to that assessment. And the legislature did that in the last session. So it kind of made things a convoluted, screwed up little nightmare mess. But that, just so you know, it's out there now. That changed the rules a lot.
Thank you.
So I know this ain't public comment period, but talking about this hospital and the need for housing for nurses and, you know, deputies and all of that.
Teachers, yeah.
If the county owns land, could they take that land and do a county, a public-private cooperation and take bids to have houses? Because then the county is helping subsidize low-income or affordable housing for deputies and nurses and teachers. So if they own this strip of land, is there a way that the county can help create a way to build affordable housing by maintaining some sort of control, but donating that land to a type of program like that?
There is a way to do it. It is volatile, but there is a way to do it. Welcome to Steamboat Springs. Welcome to Vail. Welcome to Aspen. That's who did it first, and that's where the court cases came from. But it's a doable thing to do. It's just really kind of a tough nut to crack of how much do you do, what goes in, what percentage. And remember the rule of threes. A third of the price of a subdivision is the land. A third of the price is the engineering, construction, and the way it goes. and a third is the cost of sale, the cost of holding, and the profit. I don't care where you're subdividing land in London, in Moscow, in New York City, in Montana. The rule of threes holds just about dead on. The third is the land. So if we own the land, that means if we contributed 1 acre to build a house on, that's a third of the cost. So the question is, how do you get around what's a fair amount for the county to contribute to the equation? So then you go through this volatile discussion of what can we do, but it works. Sometimes the county's or city's contribution is like roads, streets, waive the cost for a sewer hookup fee. That's one I've been beating on Missoula for 40 years over, about if you guys want to really support lower income housing, why are you charging so much to hook on the sewage system for the city when the rest of it already paid for it? Why so much to hook onto the water hookup? So there's different ways to do it, but that's a conversation the commissioners can do a public hearing on. We're taking comments about the question of county participation in encouraging lower or moderate income housing. What can we do? There's all sorts of different options out there.
Well, we've gotten, the new apartments down by the river, Edna's Court, Anderson's old apartments up here, they were all low income. And was it a private contractor, the owner that came in and did it and then gets subsidized by the government to help with these rents?
Most of that money comes to the state or from the federal government.
Yeah, okay.
Some of it's HUD money, housing and urban development. Some is health education and welfare.
So
There's
are there
different sources.
Grants out there kind of person could look into?
A lot of
maybe
it's
build-
grant, a lot of it's low income loan. So the money is loaned at like 1% interest, so it has to be paid back, but it's like 1% interest to pay it back over. RUS, Rural Utility Services, out of Bozeman is the federal government's branch, but they did a lot of these projects in small rural places like Townsend, Roundup, because they're really good at that. And they are something that would fit potentially if a person was looking for money, if they have any funds. They do rural more than they do urban, so they'd be a good target for like Mineral County.
Bring in, maybe you utilize that land up there, make some.
Potentially.
things.
Yeah, the funding's there. You just have to figure out which part goes. And some of it takes some progressive thinking. It's been hard to get Alberton and Superior to both look at, you don't have to annex the land to put sewer on it. You can contract the sewer service. Contract the sewage. And it's hard for them to comprehend. We don't have to annex right now. No, you don't. Make people waive the right to protest annexation. But then if it gets annexed later, they can't protest it. But hook on the sewer now, collect the money, collect the fees for the sewer, collect the fee for sewer improvements, but don't tax it as city land yet. It's just you sometimes have to be progressive about it. And that doesn't affect the commissioners directly. But to use the land, it does. Because it needs sewer and water, because the water also is fire protection. Those things affect it a lot for how viable it is.
I think we probably gone through our allotted time. We can get through our questions.
But we're flexible, we're easy.
So I would like to just really quick answer a couple other questions that I was able to get answers to. And understand that this research is ongoing. It's a lot to do and
Yes.
with time constraints. And everything that we have to look into is dependent on other people. And so it just depends on what other people can get for us. But I do want to answer the question of who applies for these grants for the health department. We talked about the health department is absolutely wonderful at writing their own grants. Everybody that works at the health department, or nearly everyone employed there, is involved in a grant writing process. So whenever the health department comes and they ask for something, they have researched a grant and they come in and they ask, can we apply for this grant? And the commissioners say, is there any matching funds? No matching funds is generally the case with the health department. And then,
Are we on the hook for health
Yeah.
insurance and all?
so we have paid just about virtually nothing for all of the grants that they write to keep themselves going.
They're self-sustaining. yeah.
Yes, they are fabulous. And is the funding adequate? I have not heard complaints from the health department, and I think that's because they know how to get the funding that they need. So another one that I would like to answer, actually, I think as far as my research goes, I think that does it. Ambulance building is still something I'm looking into. We get a lot of questions about that ambulance building. And I haven't found any answers to that yet, but I'm still on that.
Aren't we in the public comment at 10 o'clock?
No, we're not.
Oh, I thought I saw that on the agenda.
Yeah, public comment is at 11:30.
Okay.
Is that what you said? Are we in the public
I
comment?
thought today was 11:30.
No, we kept that at 11:30.
Oh, okay. I
And
just didn't want
so-
to cut into anybody else's time.
Nope, nope. So that's the only thing that I have answers to right now,
Okay,
I think.
Thank you.
yes. it is
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah, and back to the health department, that's why, so the county, we kind of have a pay structure based on what we can afford and, you know, what we start out at, what we, when we give raises, but regarding like the health department, since they're grant funded, when they apply for a grant, their salary is usually stated in the grant, so there might be someone that starts out for the health department at, you know, $20 an hour because that's what the grant states and pays. So that's the only kind of time that we deviate from our normal hiring, starting pay, because that's what, they're all running on a different set of numbers.
Yeah, we skipped over the sheriff's department thing.
Yep, because I didn't have any answers for the sheriff's department. I just wanted to get out the things that I had time to research.
You
I don't
know,
know about Roman and Dwayne on law enforcement.
so what role do the commissioners play with our sheriff's department? One of the first questions we had there. And, you know, from the last meeting that I was at, which was on the 2nd, said that you really didn't have any control over the sheriff's department.
Their budget, their purse strings.
Actually, there's a statute out there that says you can require the sheriff to attend every one of these meetings and in person. And so that might be a way to help at least get the person back on track here. And I can tell you which one it is here. Yeah, it's, I believe it's, 7-5-21-26. And I believe that says the commissioners have the right to have the sheriff here in person, or you can designate the deputy. It doesn't say the sheriff can designate, it says you can, if you so desire. But that is one way that it might be, you might want to research that. And you might want to, you know, we had a lot of complaints around the county about a sheriff that's not here, but at least get him here 4 or 5 days a month. And that's specific to the sheriff.
Okay.
I don't know about other workers.
The other statute, Ken, is specific to county officers.
There is another one specific?
There's a statute that talks about county officers,
Okay,
and county officers includes clerk and recorder, clerk of court, the county sheriff, the auditor, all the positions.
all the elected officials.
Elected officials are all on that list. There's a separate statute on county officers, and the commissioners have a good leash on county officers.
What does that
Different
mean?
statute. What?
What does that mean, the commissioners have a good leash?
The commissioners are the entity that drive the bus. In terms of, that's the governing entity that runs the governor, so the commissioners can say, you have to provide your books, you have to work this many hours for sure, you have to, those things are all on the list of what commissioners do for county officers. Perform your duties, the statute requires people to perform, et cetera.
That's all.
There's a good list. If the statute's in the Montana Code, it's like 7 parts before the one you just cited.
Okay.
It's like 2101 or something, I can't remember, but it's in there.
Okay.
County officers.
So they,
Wally, we had, a few years ago, we had a clerk and recorder that was absent, an outgoing one, so, you know, didn't really care, and actually took another job in another county and was gone, and we were trying to find a way to cease her benefits, say, just quit, resign now, you're not here anyway, but that person did not want to because still had health insurance or whatever else.
Right.
And we were not able to get any movement on that at all, and we were told that because, I mean, so I'm keenly interested in what you're saying, we can compel someone like that in the future to be
Yes.
at work?
Yes.
I'd
This
like
is an
to-
old thing of Mike Saysted and Wally and Jack and a few other guys at Mako.
Because you're the only attorney I've heard say that, so I'd like to see that.
Mike Saystead would tell you that's true. He was there too for years. So would Jack Holstrom. There's some rules. You can't, there's also a separation. You don't want the commissioners guiding too much of the treasurer who does the books. You don't want commissioners cooking the books, you know. You don't want commissioners changing the records on the clerk and recorder because they record all the stuff and do it. So you've got this kind of separation balance deal. But at the same time, because you are the entity that runs the county, which is the government entity all those people work for, you set the standards. So you do have a fair amount of what they're required to do, and if the duties are be here, and they're not here, they breach the duty. That's the key, and that's the
So what, we
county
have to launch a
officer
recall, our own recall
statute. Don't
petition?
have to do a recall, you do a petition. If somebody gets a felony or some other things, you can not even recall them, you just.
Well, then,
remove them.
there's the ethical part of it, yeah.
Right,
But I'm
there's a
talking about just
statute.
because we're having a personal beef with how they run their office and what they're doing, you're saying that we can have a petition based on that?
Yes, and you can petition the courts and make them do what they're supposed to do for their duties and for the statute.
That's been my argument. There was a judge in Missoula not too many years ago where the commissioners removed.
That's
You
right.
remember that?
Yes, I do.
And I've been saying that here at that meeting, that how the hell did that happen?
When I say Mike Saystead, all I'll tell you is he was in the middle of that discussion.
Well, you had a county attorney here before that wouldn't show up. It took a private citizen going to the bar or whatever, whoever kind of governs the county attorneys, to say, get your butt to work. It wasn't you people. It took somebody else to do it.
It was the
You know what
Attorney
I'm
General
talking-
who did it.
Pardon?
It was the Attorney General who did
That,
it.
and
That's right.
they got her back to work here, wasn't happy, but. it
So you
can
do
be
have
done.
some teeth then.
Oh, yeah.
But you
we-
guys
we
chose
were
not
told,
to.
So please,
I know you've been told that for a long time, Roman, and that was kind of a dispute. I am not that old, but I'm old enough to know better. So the reality is, there's kind of a dispute between the people who were a lot younger, who didn't kind of come up through the ranks when we changed the Constitution and the other thing in the 70s, and the statutes changed in the 80s. So those people who did, which was like Jack Holstrom at Mako, Mike Saystead at Missoula Mako, Jim Tillotson was at Billings, Jim Nugent's still in Missoula, he's been there 43 years. You talk to those guys, you get a whole different perspective on how it works versus people who didn't come up through the ranks and do it. And so I'm not saying either one's totally right or totally wrong, but when they say, commissioners, you have no say, that is not true. The statute you found is one, and there's a whole set of other statutes, plus there's also a statutory duty for elected persons.
Yes.
Like a clerk and recorder has this list, a commissioner has this list, an auditor has this list. So this is not just run by commissioners, that's their duties, but you can direct them, you're not doing your duty, you need to do it, and if they don't, then the petition goes to a district court judge and he orders it or she orders it. It's doable. Or the AG orders it, which has been done, especially with attorneys, because who the county attorney answers to actually is not just the county commissioners. The general director for state prosecution in Montana is the attorney general.
So Wally, I for one would like to sit down with you and want you to teach what that exactly means to commissioners. Because I understand what you just said, but because it is different from everything I've
to
ever
apply
heard.
it, to
Yeah,
apply it.
I would like to learn more and really understand every piece of that.
Because if we shoot an email to Mako right now and ask them their opinion on it, it ain't gonna be what you just said.
But the last thing
I
they'll
guarantee
say in
it.
their opinion back to you says, but please talk to your county attorney, because that's who guides your bus. And they put that on there, because Mako has kind of figured out, they don't have a whole lot of the different stuff one way or the other. You know, we can go through, I'm not saying either one is dead right. But remember, I-105 was in the 90s, and that's when the public spoke, and the public voted about freezing taxes, etc. And from the Supreme Court cases out of that, what happened is the public's opinion, the public's goal to say do this, got a whole lot more horsepower. So the duties by statute answer to the public, and the commissioners answer to the public, so you're the public's tool to implement. So the Supreme Court gave you a whole lot more credibility after 105 than you had before then, which is no surprise. So you guys kind of moved up on the food chain a whole bunch because of public outcry. And remember, they froze the budget They did not freeze the millage, just so you know.
That's why taxes still go up.
That's why taxes still go up.
So,
Thank Hot Springs for that.
so, these statutory requirements of elected officials, are they all in one section?
They're different sections of the Montana Code.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, spend a little time on Google.
And you also would, it's hard for people to realize the county attorney is supposed to do the work for the school district, the rural fire district, the conservation district, the county commissioners, clerk and recorder, all those persons. It's a really broad gamut of stuff. Most county attorneys never read the statute, or the statutes, as the case may be. But if you're good at the job, what you do is if the fire district calls and has a question, you damn well have the answer. That's what you're supposed to do, that's what you get paid to do it. And go to the commissioner meeting every week. You're supposed to do it, you're supposed to be available, and I don't care what time it is, they all have my cell phone number, and I tell them, Deb too. We both say, I don't care what time it is, call if there's a question. Same with the road department, the same with the sheriff. That's what you do. That goes with the turf.
Well, I think Wally just answered a lot of the questions on that law enforcement. And do the commissioners provide guidance? Sounds like you can.
And, you know, regarding, we have had, whenever we do, Mr. Cashman, he's really good about showing up. We have had trouble in the past with getting past sheriffs to come and attend and visit and update us and answer questions, and Mr. Cashman's been pretty good. So we haven't had any trouble with that lately, but we have had it in the past where they won't, including town council meeting. There's been, you know, the only time they would show up at Alberton or Superior is when they want the annual contract for law enforcement for the cities.
The point is, Roman, that you have the power to mandate.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell them to be here, and they have to be,
Mm-hmm.
according to statute. Is that not true?
Yep.
Yeah, what's the penalty for that? I know there's a statute, but what's the penalty for not complying?
There's various penalties. One is a court order that says you have to. Number two, you can also cut budgets, cut personnel.
Yeah.
3, you can do the letter that says recall this person and move them.
But you know what happens when we cut the budget of the sheriff or personnel, then we have egg on our face, because then
Right.
the public suffers, because we're
Right.
taking out this sheriff with those means that we have, and then the public says, why are you not providing good law enforcement? So that's really hard for any commissioner.
And that's,
Yeah,
it's
but-
a tough one to do. There's a whole lot of different ways to get them.
My opinion of that is this isn't a popularity contest. You've got to do what's in the best interest of this
I
county.
know, but the way it works is, then that sheriff goes around and tells everybody, I could do a better job if the commissioners would give
Oh,
me
yeah.
enough money. So, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Well, believe it or not, a lot of people see through that too.
Yeah, I hope so, yeah.
But you guys got to be prepared to defend yourself as well.
Well, it's pretty hard with Facebook and stuff, but now rumors and lies go rampant, then you can't undo them, because nobody cares to really find out the truth, but that's another issue right there.
Yeah.
I think there's lots of food for thought there, because it is something to think about. Oh, now you know the sheriff could be here every Friday, and then the public maybe wants to come, and so the sheriff is held accountable by the public, just by the public's presence, or any elected official, or what's the new term? Not elected
A
official,
county officer.
a county officer.
That's what they're called.
Okay, so anyway, I think that that's a really good idea that comes from this, that they're held accountable just by the attendance of the public.
Yeah, so you guys have to answer the difficult questions. They can be here and defend that. It's not just a Facebook thing.
Mm-hmm.
Are we being recorded? Is it something new over here?
Oh, that's the same.
She's always recorded, and so is, well, I guess I wasn't here last
I'm a new recorder, I'm just a citizen.
Oh, you're just on your own?
On my own.
Oh, okay. Are you doing it every week?
What's that?
Are you going to do it every week?
Every week I can make it. Quick question, if I can, Wally, on those subpoenas. Just one statute further is the subpoena power and everything you're talking about, Ken. But the county attorney would have to issue those, correct?
The county attorney drafts them, but who has the power to subpoena is the commissioners.
Okay.
It's been done one time since 1998 in Montana.
And then that person subpoenaed is held under the rules of evidence? instead of-
And they have to show up for the commissioners' meeting at the time and place the commissioners say you have to be here.
It says any person as well.
Any person. But the commissioners have the power of subpoena. So if we want a witness that shows up somewhere, the commissioners, just like a district court, have the power to subpoena that person here to testify.
We would have to subpoena every time we have a meeting, or one subpoena served for the whole year?
You can serve one subpoena for a whole year if you wanted to, but you have the power to do it. The last county I did that for, it hadn't been done since 1980, it was McGinley at Beaverhead, I did it for them. And there was a whole bunch of questions, and Helena, what do you mean? I said, look, Jack, read the statute. Commissioners have subpoena power per the 1895 statutes in Bannock, and you still have it. McGinley probably told you that story, but I did it.
Bannock was the first territorial
Capital,
capital in Montana.
you got it,
Then moved to Virginia State.
yeah.
Did you read the witness is required to answer the question statute though? But it basically says they're required to answer the questions unless A, B, C, D, E, and every one of those A, B, C, D, E's is pretty much a catch-all.
Yep.
Meaning that they don't have to answer the meeting?
So it says they have to, legal and pertinent to the matter. I'll just read the whole thing. A witness shall answer questions legal and pertinent to the matter and issue, though the answer may establish a claim against the witness. However, the witness is not required to give an answer that will have a tendency to subject the witness to punishment for a felony, or to give an answer that will have a direct tendency to degrade the witness's character, unless the answer is able to unless the answer is to the very fact in issue or to a fact from which the fact in issue would be presumed.
So what's the amendment you take?
I think it's like 1, 2, 3, 4,
It's
5.
the fifth.
So just managing expectations. That's a
Yeah.
pretty
But
broad.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't because that will.
Yeah.
But the amendment, the exceptions to the subpoena are the Fifth Amendment. Ask Spiro Agnew, he took the fifth as well, so did Dick Nixon, so did some other people.
Well, that's my thing because it's a civil proceeding, but you still have that. That doesn't mean you waive that constitutional right. So,
Right, you don't, that's the key.
so I mean, it might get awkward and red-faced, but I mean, technically, I guess they don't have to say anything.
Just ask the question a different way, I'll get the answer.
Kim, do you foresee a follow-up
Yes.
today?
Yes, we'll be back with some.
Okay.
We'll get a letter together.
Yeah, so I do have a couple questions on the law enforcement still. I think at the last meeting, we heard that the Forest Service contributes $8,000 a year. Is
Do those
that,
campground checks?
yeah, is that every year consistent? Has that been there for a long time? Is that something you guys negotiate at the end of the year or start of the next year? Or when, is that something that's negotiated?
Yeah, it doesn't just stay the same, takes into account cost of fuel.
Okay.
Would that be something that you'd want these guys to start logging their time so you can see if it's really cost effective?
They call into dispatch and say, I'm doing campground, log me in as doing campground check at Chalk Creek.
So somebody can bring you some information when you go to negotiate that says,
How many, in
I
fact,
spend
the Forest Service
9,000.
wants it because they want to make sure they're getting their service
Oh,
that
good.
they pay for. So that's why the deputies call in and say, I'm at Chalk Creek or I'm at whatever campground, please note that. And then the deputy's name and number associated with the campground check and the time of the day. Are they doing it once a day or twice? What's the?
Just as calls warranted, but at least all 4 every day if they can get to it.
Mhm.
And everything's logged, it's in a spreadsheet.
are you a dispatcher or deputy or something?
Just a citizen.
Okay.
So, I guess if 8,000 is ample, that does not seem like a lot of money through the
No.
course of a year to do a very good job of watching campgrounds. So I'm just
They
curious.
basically just drive through, Willie, and make an
Yeah,
appearance, fly the
but-
colors.
Right.
So that people that are there go, oh, cops come through every once in a while, we better not, raise a ruckus.
But some of these campgrounds are a long ways away from town. And I don't know if that means we do all campgrounds or,
There's 4 of them that we do, a Trout Creek one and Slowway, they have a campground post sometimes.
so is that on an agreement with the forest that you do those for?
Yeah, and like I said, it's negotiable.
City.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the?
There's Chalk Creek, Courts, Cabin City, and Slower.
Yeah. Yeah, the only one that's really far away
Yeah.
would be Cabin City.
We're, as you know, we're talking about a pretty big expansion of recreation in the Fish Creek drainage. And I'm hoping that there's
an avenue to negotiate that thing, because it's going to change. It is already, you mentioned it, just with the raptors on the river. You know, things have changed because of that, so. Anyway, $8,000 just seemed like a pretty low number to do
Right.
much monitoring, so.
And we get paid by the city a certain amount for,
Yeah, the sheriff contracts with the city based on his, whatever, the manpower, hourly wage, the wear and tear on the car, the cost of fuel, and then he goes to town council and they agree upon an annual contract for providing law enforcement. And it's pretty easy for them to meet the needs of Superior, but oftentimes Alberton is not happy with the contract that they historically don't see law enforcement down there, but they're taking the money. But
Well, they have an option to hire their own sheriff.
correct, their own city police or marshal. And that's usually what prevents them from doing it. They still reluctantly enter into the contract because it's pretty expensive to hire a cop, send them to the academy, buy a car.
If I can give them a piece of the puzzle, Roman, here's the simple thing that way to answer both of your questions. If the county has a resource use part of the county's growth policy that talks about recreation, the cost of doing so, the cost of policing it, and the cost of money that has to go in for upkeep and maintenance of those things, including law enforcement, here's the skinny. When the federal forest plan comes down, or you're working on the forest plan, the rules are their plan has to be consistent with our plan to the extent legally possible. So if we have the plan that has the information about recreation in it that you were just talking about, Roman, those things, if our plan includes that, when we do the forest plan and we do certain projects on an ongoing basis as part of scoping projects, their plan under federal law has to be consistent with our plan to the extent legally possible. So we get to the funding position, we get to the care, to the money poured into it, put into it, because we have the plan, and their plan has to be consistent with ours. That is not a luxury that TU gets. Nature Conservancy doesn't get it. Nobody else gets it but local government. So the reason why the resource use part of the growth policy matters is that document's the document their document has to be consistent with, to the extent possible. So that information that goes into our local plan is part of what guides the bus for how we get the Forest Service to upgrade the game down the road. A lot. And it makes a huge difference. That's the keys. I just want you to see how the puzzle fits. But it's a puzzle you haven't played a lot. But when you start to play it differently and plug those things in, all of a sudden the whole playing field changed. A lot. Just so you know.
Is that in our current growth plan?
Nope, it's not.
Seems I should have started with that.
We're getting started on it.
Mr. Woodford?
So I have a question. And kind of circling back to the maintenance, county road maintenance and things like that. And we talked a little bit about PILT, and we talked a little bit about SRS, and the two obviously are different. And I'm wondering if you can explain to folks here what PILT is and what SRS, or Secure Rural Schools Self-Determination Act funding is, and how that interfaces with the road maintenance. So it's kind of circling back, and I was gonna wait for public comment, but it seemed like this was a pretty good time.
So PILT is, in 1976, the states went to Congress and said, the western states, we have all this federal land, and we don't get any tax-based money on it. Well, you can't tax the federal government, so they said, so Congress passed PILT, payments in lieu of taxes. And then they arrived at this complex formula based on how many acres you have, and population, and recreation. I can't remember what all it includes, but anyway. So the smaller counties in Montana typically get 37 cents an acre, like Todd Devlin's County and Mineral County. And then the larger ones like Missoula, they tend to get like $1.26 or $1.30. And that money comes to us every year in the form of that check based on our number of acres and population. And so that money is not earmarked for anything. It just comes to us freely, which we can move. We could give it all to the fair, we could give it all to the library, we could give it, we typically end up using it to shore up revenue loss in the sheriff's office. Justice is we pay a high price for justice. Cameras, cars, 911, blah, blah. So we typically backfill, because I mean, that's nothing new. That's been going on in Mineral County forever, that the sheriff's office and the jails cost a lot of money. Then, secure rural schools came along after the logging and the timber industry declined, because forever, since Teddy Roosevelt was president, that was kind of his, go-to thing for western counties. I know you have all this federal land and you don't get any benefit of it, but there's all this timber on it. So when the Forest Service does logging projects, every logging truckload that comes out of my forest, his newly created Forest Service, you will get 25% of that revenue to support your schools and your roads. And that 25% fund ran great when our loggers and our heyday and our mills were running. We had enough money. In fact, the eastern counties, prior to their Bakken discoveries and stuff, they were jealous of the western counties because we had all this money coming off of the timberlands. And then the whole paradigm shift and the Forest Service stopped doing the sales, and then we lost the mill, and then we lost all of the money that multiplied off of running the forest timberland. And so around 2000, I might be off on the year, the western counties came to the government and said, hey, we need some help. We're not getting any money off the 25% fund. The eastern counties, they're doing okay now with their oil and gas, but we need money for our schools and our roads, and you guys aren't logging anymore. So then they decided to come up with this SRS check to provide counties for their schools and roads, and it was based on some kind of a high rolling 3-year average of the best days of logging, and they came up with this amount. And so I think we get 2/3 go to schools, 1/3 to the county. And so I think we get $1.2 million, so 1/3 of that we keep, and then 2/3 split between St. Regis, Alberton, Superior. And that's what we've gotten since around 2000, which was a tremendous shot in the arm, because the mill shut down in '94. They went about 6 years. Those poor commissioners were trying to make ends meet with nothing, and then but the SRS money is earmarked. Unlike PILT, it is specifically only for the schools. We don't get any of that, and the roads. So that's why we do not have a road fund tax like you see on your check or on your tax bill for the library or for the fair. There is nothing for the road, because the SRS money for the county is enough that we get to keep the road fund operational, and in fact they're getting a little excess reserve that they keep for a rainy day, or should SRS not be, because it's a year, I mean, it's not an automatic thing. Year to year, they have to approve it at the congressional level. And as I stated earlier, a lot of those eastern counties that don't have federal land like we do, they're going, hey, what's this all about? How can we keep putting out all these millions, billions of dollars for these counties? It's just a welfare check. So they either want to maybe cease it, or they're wanting a piece of the pie bigger for their proportion. So that is an annual fight every year, but the SRS money cannot be moved around to help shortfall the sheriff's office or any other county fund.
Is that included in the current omnibus bill that's before the Congress?
I know that our leaders always try to include it, but I actually don't know the current status, but that's something they always fight for. Tester and James, and they're always really on top of. They know how important it is to Montana.
Is Mineral County a part of the National Forest Counties and Schools Coalition?
We're part of the. Are you still on that board? The Montana. We're on forested counties. Yeah, I don't know if it's the national one, but we're at the state level. We're Montana Forested Counties. And when we have a chairman that goes back to Washington D.C. and with the national NACO, and he does the pitch about how important it is to keep this
Is
going.
that Kermit Walters?
I think it's Greg Chilcott. Yeah,
There's also one other program like it, which is what the eastern counties make money off of now that they never got stuff before. The federal program for mineral interests in those counties on federal land is called Bankhead Jones, which is a federal law. So like we got 25% of the timber checks, the eastern counties get 15% of the mineral royalty revenues off federal land. So Bankhead Jones and the back and field, those counties are just filthy rich. The richest county for a long time in Montana for conservation districts was which county? Rosebud. Why was that? Because they had all the coal mines that Bankhead Jones money out the Kazuga, plus they had 4 huge generators paying property taxes. But Bankhead Jones is a similar program to SRS Pill, that the counties who get the benefit of that have natural gas, coal, and oil. Big time. And they do really, really well off that now that the back-end's there. They weren't doing so hot years ago when we had the trees and they didn't. So it's changed now. Just so you know, there's a similar program for each of them. And that one's an issue now over the question of trading state land and federal land often on reservations. Because when they trade it, the Bankhead Jones funding is lost in schools.
But is there a way that the Forest Service can determine the SRS amount, or they just lobby the same way that school districts or counties do? I mean, they can't penalize you by reducing your SRS.
no, and what I was kind of hinting at was, I don't think they would, but a lot of congressmen are talking about withdrawing that program because they don't see why. They initiated it thinking it would be it used to be done on at a 6-year interval. And I think they kind of thought that maybe after a number of years that we wean off of it and get our own economies going. But as I always argue when I see them, you guys control all the land around us and you're not allowing any economy to develop. I mean, I was furious when we finally had some Black Diamond snowmobiling going on up at Hoodoo, and people were coming. Our motels were full, our restaurants were full. Then they go and they decide to shut down the Montana side or portions of the Montana side. So now we don't have near the snowmobilers because they don't want to be outlaws and get their sled taken away at a $5,000 fine. So how are we going to get an economy going when, even though it's a drop in the bucket compared to logging, but you won't let any drop in the bucket even begin to grow? We could have 4-wheeler trails for multiple use. We could have snowmobiling. We could have, but everything just seems to be based on look at it from the interstate or hike it on foot. And that's my frustration. You're not going to get an economy off of that. The people that have thick wallets are the motorheads, you know, really. But
one more, you might know this, Wally. The federal ground in the eastern part of our nation is very small. I mean, it's campgrounds and a few things like that. But Washington D.C. itself, with all of its land mass and its monuments, its government buildings, and so on and so forth, didn't they revise their portion of that in 1995 to take advantage of that? And consequently, they get huge amounts of money under urban renewal because they couldn't pay for their public services, hospitals, ambulance, fire, police force, right? Am I right?
You are. The difference is they have the population. So go to towns in California. There's certain national forest offices and districts in California that are tiny little thing, and they get like 50 times more PILT money for a national forest that's 5,000 acres than we get for the whole Lolo in the county. Because they have the population and the demand. That's why in the resource use part of the plan, one thing that's really a fun thing to do is what percentage of the campers in the campground at Slowway in the summer are out-of-state people? What percentage in the one down here before you get down to Lozo? What percentage of the people who stay the night are out-of-state? And when you get those kind of numbers put together in the basis, all of a sudden it's not only guiding the Forest Service's plan, it also becomes a lobbying point to say, wait a second, we need this because this is how many people are not local taxpayers, but they sure get the local benefit.
That's the same way with I-90 running through here.
Same deal.
I mean, we need a toll on each end to cover all the idiots that they pick up here and our Justice Department has to take care of. So I think that'd be a valid point in negotiating something, you know, like DC or the, you know. their
The
monuments,
interesting part of that
monuments,
discussion is
anyway.
this, what's the most basic freedom that you have?
Freedom, travel.
No, travel. The most basic freedom is not written in the Constitution, it's freedom of mobility. So you can't charge a toll unless it's a private road, because the minute you charge a toll on a public way, you restrict people's mobility. That's why you can't have a toll.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying.
No, I'm just saying that
That's a
people forget.
negotiating fact.
The mobility is the most basic freedom we have. It's phenomenal, people forget that. That's
I'm
true.
just saying, use I-90 as a negotiating token to
Yeah.
get us something more from the
What about a
feds.
big gate, though, Wally? We could let them in.
Just start taxing it,
Yeah,
it's
we
federal.
could let them in, let them
Certain
drive
states.
all over, they could be as mobile as they wanted, and then charge them to get out.
Sounds like Maryland.
I know in California, they have toll roads, all the highways,
Yeah,
in
they
Orange
can.
County,
Maple
they are all
Street
toll
Bridge.
roads.
But they were privately built.
Oh.
That's the difference. Same with the Pennsylvania Turnpike, private roadway. Yep, New York Turnpike, Chicago Turnpike, privately built.
Exits in Indiana, privately built.
Privately built, you got it.
Thank you.
But I-90 is federal. It's important. And we should be getting something on every car that goes there.
We gotta get them to stop.
Yeah.
We gotta quit looking at how do we not spend
No,
money.
you just put a
How do we
car
keep-
counter and then you send that bill to the feds and say, this is how many came through, this is how many we had to prosecute. Thing.
Or where it takes their license plate.
Yeah, like California, you don't pay your toll. That charge.
Where are we at on time? I just had a question from watching the videos.
An hour over.
Before.
Go ahead.
So the question I had is Kenny was talking about how many septic permits, because that's something that's easy to track, that was issued in about the last year, and it was 140 some or something like that. And so, most counties I've worked in, they have, maybe not part of their planning office, but they have a building permit section. So not only does the building permits, I think in Ronan and Lake County, it was substantial. It was like 1% of the gross cost. And that would have been on public, where the bids are open and everybody knows what they are. But I'm not here trying to say we need to raise taxes, but every time I listen to a meeting, it's like, we don't have enough money to run the county. So when I look at that and I wonder about the building permits, is I'm thinking that not only is the permitting is a small thing, but you can track what's going on. There's people that go out and decide to build another garage or barn or anything, they don't need a permit. There's, you know, if the gentleman from Thompson Falls don't happen to see that, I mean, if they hook it up to their own existing electric meter, they're not pulling an electric permit. There's no plumbing permits required. So the county don't even know these buildings and this property is being improved, and there's no way to get any tax dollars from them. If there was a building permit requirement to build in the county, it actually helps contractors. They know what is required. I mean, you don't have mistakes made like somebody trying to put some stuff on the old highway up here by the hilltop, to find out later there's an ordinance that says you can't do that. So I think that the commissioners should consider setting up a department for building permits. The growth in this county is getting to be substantial. Most of them from out of state. I mean, you build a new house in Seattle, Washington, you got $10,000 and you gotta buy a permit right up front. So to have a small permit that is not only sustainable, but can generate some revenue so that county tax dollars represent what's out there, I think is something you guys need to think about. I think you need to start thinking of all kinds of things to get the revenue in here, to run the county
Instead of always thinking, well, how do we cut this, how do we cut that? How do you cut the sheriff's department? How do you cut the costs that go up all the time to heat the jail, pay for electricity? You're gonna have to start looking at how you get more money. And it don't just mean let's raise everybody's property taxes, but let's hold people accountable. If you've got a $1 million house come in and you don't even know about it. So, I mean, when I've talked to the city about this, they said, oh, we don't wanna do that, we gotta hire somebody to do this and to do that. And I know that you can't have Andy do it, the planners don't have any time for it, but it could be set up where, if you could at least track all the building and construction that's going on. Because it's some of these projects, you got out-of-state people coming in and building, they got equipment out there, they don't pay any tax dollars on it, you guys don't even know what's going on. And I think this is just one of the things, I would like to get a copy of the budget. The whole budget, how much money do you get
I
every
believe that that's on file anytime you want it, Mike.
I'm gonna grab it.
Yep. All you gotta do
Because
is
what I
look
wanna
at it.
look at, I look at budgets the opposite of the way the county does. You guys you get this much money and it's how we gonna spend it. I would look at how much money do we need and what's missing in the budget and how do you get it? Just like running a business. So I think that maybe I could have some input, it's not gonna be instant. But I mean, there's gotta be some ways out there where we're not always hearing we're such a poor county. Because what I correlate with that is we're such a poor county, we can't give you the services that we should. And so I think there's ways to start looking at this from a different perspective. And in some ways that maybe, I mean, every time I hear about the sheriff's department, they're running over budget. And you gotta
You'll
take-
you'll hear that from any sheriff's department in the state.
Okay, so maybe their
Go
budgets need
talk
be-
to any other county commissioner, go talk to Lake County, Sanders County,
but I don't
they
buy
all
into
run
that.
over budget, it's a nature of the beast.
You don't have to. You gotta look at it from a different perspective.
Well, I'm not saying that,
It is, I understand, I've sat here and listened before. I've heard a sheriff say, well, how did we know gas was gonna go up a buck? I'm like, well, we bid 10, 12, $50 million jobs. How did we know gas was gonna go up a buck? And so I'm not saying there's an easy answer, but I would like to start taking a look at it to see if I can find some answers.
So, what Mike's talking about, for me, strikes home, it's the things that we're looking for a way.
Yes.
We're not putting it all on you guys, I hope that we're not putting it all on you guys. We're just trying to figure out why we're where we're at, why we're short all the time, why we don't have the funds to do the things we'd like to see done. And then, once we know why we don't have those, then maybe there's a way for us to help find those funds and to be part of the fix here instead of part of the problem. But, so one of those things, Roman, did you get a chance to talk to anybody with the Department of Revenue about all the things with these taxes that might give you?
Yeah, they're gonna they'd be willing to come out and have somebody, I don't know if it's number 2 or number 3 person, I forgot his name. But we'll arrange that and we'll put it on the agenda. So, of course, with January starting,
Right.
they're gonna be busy in Helen, but on a Friday, I'm gonna try and get him to come over here so we all can talk about, he's missed, what Mike's talking about. Years ago, we did have a county assessor who did go out and appraise and look for new builds. And then the state took that, we don't have a county assessor, it's all state assessors, and Department of Revenue is, and like you said, the electrical permits trigger a notification and the septic permits trigger it. And this is a problem statewide that, in fact, Liberty County, their county road guys, when they go out and plow the road or grade the road, they're giving them a camera and they're taking pictures. I mean, it's easier to do over there because it's flatter than flat. You can, oh, look at that new Quonset hut or barn. And they're sending it to Revenue because they say, hey, look what you're missing. I met with Lieutenant Governor Juris a couple weeks ago, and she said that they're trying to find out ways that revenue can use drones, you know, the legality of that. But they're aware that they're missing a lot of stuff. It's not just unique to Mineral County. There was a gentleman in Sanders County built a trophy home, didn't get a tax bill for 3.5 years, and he went to the county and said, hey, give me a bill, because I don't want to get caught all at once with a 5-year catch-up bill. So they are aware that their department needs to be more on the ball with catching these new builds and appraisals. So, but yeah, we'll try to arrange that, Willie, and get that gentleman over here.
And I
Some of
think
that
our
is
mapping
done.
guy,
Yeah, he does
also,
some of
yep,
that.
he finds that stuff and
He
alerts
looks-
us to that.
If he's
Yeah.
out mapping a piece that we know is there, and he's, new subdivision or something, and he sees anything out of the ordinary, he makes note of it and sends it to Andy.
That's
What
an
sends it
address
to you
guy.
guys? For
What?
Department of Revenue?
What's that?
When the mapping guy sees something like that, he sends it to the Department of Revenue?
He sends
He
it to our
sends it.
planner, who then takes it from there and goes out to the property and does whatever it is his job to do. But
I
that's,
mean, it is pretty limited, the planner.
But it is
That's
what-
not a county septic, that's
Well,
on a city sewer.
but it's what we have right now. That is one thing that we are doing, is the mapping guy does alert the planner, and then he goes out to the property. So,
Because I just built
At
a
least we have
place
this
and
little
sold
bit.
it, out where I live in there in Mullen Road West. I had to contact the guy in Thompson Falls
Yeah,
and tell him I built that.
yeah,
Because I'm trying to close on it, there's no tax bill.
yeah.
And so I had to call him up and say, he said, oh, well, I'll send a drone over to look at it if that's okay. I'm like, I don't care, I just want to see a tax bill,
right.
so I can close on the property. So, and I'm in the city limits. I thought everybody in the county was. So, but I just think they're missing things, and it's the same as Willie and Ken. I think there's ways that the county don't have to just be, we're just a poor county. I mean, I realize, I think we ought to just start sending property tax bills to the federal government.
We did do
We
that
did.
once.
Yeah, let them fight.
Where?
We did it once, it wasn't very popular, but we paid it for a statement, for a point.
That's my tax
And it was a
bills.
heck of a lot more money than our SRS and our PILT when you had the 650,000 acres or whatever it is, and multiply it by just bare timberland.
So just to back up to what Mike and Willie just said, reiterate that, how do we expedite that? I mean, we wait for the Department of Revenue, we got these piecemeal ways of going out looking, but there's really nothing in place to ensure that we get tax dollars. And I think at the last meeting I was at, on the second, I asked this question, because of the septic permits, are those taxable the minute they're put in? Because if you look back, like last year, our septic permits went up 300% over the year before. Not all of them were completed, so some of them languish out there, but those that were completed, they don't hit the tax base until maybe there's a building built and maybe they never see it. Andy tells me there's some of them out there been there 20 years, never been taxed.
I thought when you did improvements to bare land, it was taxable.
Well, that's our question.
Yeah,
And
that's gonna be a question for the revenue guy, or what's going on with that.
so I think it's important to get in here sooner than later, but, these are all ways to get money and maybe get money quick and maybe a lot of money. Because there's like Mike said, there's building going on all over this county, everywhere. I've been from one end to the other putting in septic systems. I see new stuff everywhere. New RV pads,
Especially those, and that mapper does make note of those too,
if he sees them,
if he sees them.
yeah. But he don't always come out.
No, and he's not ever.
But it could be part of your building permitting system.
We've remodeled a place in Washington State that has huge taxes. I don't care what you do, it's about like California. We did a remodel, you got a building permit, they only had 2 people in the whole of Sultan County, which is big, that takes in Clarkston, all the outlying area. We put a new roof on, they assessed our place $8,000 more. We put a little teeny add-on, that was another $15,000 assessment. Guy, nobody wants to hear it, nobody wants in this county, we've been free to put up a chicken coop in our living room, nobody wants it. But the point is, maybe one guy could bring in enough revenue to help offset some of the, sheriff's office, your safety, all of that. I mean, if it just took one person in a small county to enact, you know, a building permit, like Michael said, you know,
You
give them
can't-
1%, look what that's gonna do. I mean, you have to get proactive, you can't just sit and hope something's gonna fall in your lap.
It's like what Kenny and Willie are doing, and what I'm talking, you gotta look at the little things. There's no way I can say, hey, you could make $10 million doing this. But if you start looking at all the little things and put them together, it could help the county immensely. And that's what we gotta start doing, is we've gotta have some, we gotta look at everything. I know that that's, you know, why I say we need a building permitting system. I don't know how many counties don't have them.
In Montana, 47 do not have one.
47?
47 counties do not.
Just the big ones.
Missoula went to one for the whole county by building permit. It's a black hole, loses a ton of money every year. The best way to solve the revenue problem for Department of Revenue is to report it. Our road trucks, when they're sanding, our road trucks when they're grading, Andy, when they do health permits, that information going to the state makes all the difference in the world. Just report it. That gets the assessor the state has to assess it, and then we get the money that way. And that works really, really well. That's been the best way to do it.
I think we need a county assessor.
Well, we had them until the state outlawed them and take the power and gave the power back to the Department of Revenue.
Can you just, is it possible to just hire an individual? We'll just go out and look for that, he's not an assessor.
You can do that. And police what it is.
And report back, because Washington State did that.
Yeah.
I live neighbors to a guy that's all he did, just drive around and look for new.
But what happened to us is no different than what happened to Frenchtown School.
Yeah.
You had two industries, you had two industrial businesses that paid a lot of tax. And when you lose those, your tax base goes to hell. So Frenchtown School had the pulp mill. When the pulp mill left, it's upside down. What's the biggest brewery right now in Rosebud County? They're gonna close Coal Strip 3 and 4. When they close them, you have the county broke. Totally destitute, because they have no industry left that does it. So what happened is, the tax base we had was great. Look what else it had. Saw filers, the guys who worked on trucks and equipment, the guys who dealt in those. You cannot get a choker made in western Montana now. You have to drive to Spokane to get a choker pressed. I'm not kidding you. This is ridiculous. You still get it made in Superior. So as the industry left, the tax base left, and as the tax base for industry left, everybody else who's just simple residential had to step up and make up the difference. And there's no agriculture hardly left either to pay. So that's tough as well. That's why. That's what happened.
Yeah, but how do we get revenue is the question.
You gotta improve the county if you wanna get industry. If we're gonna look at the tourist industry or anything related to it, we need to improve the county where people wanna come here and invest. I mean, we're a poor county.
You what?
I think there's a lot of people wanting to come here right now.
They're
Look at all
coming.
the building we've got going on.
Yeah, because they're not paying taxes.
Yeah.
So, I have a couple more thoughts. Maybe you guys need to think about it a little bit. Number one, I don't think the three commissioners here are working 1 or 2 or 3 days a week, whatever you guys do. I know you guys do more than just that. There's all this outlying stuff that you do as well. I just don't think you guys, on that kind of a schedule, have the time to properly look for opportunities for this county to move this county ahead. I mean, you certainly can do some, but, so I had the question was if, number one, I don't know how you do it, but if we could find funding to pay to have a commissioner on staff every day of the week here in the courthouse that would be looking at these things, would you guys be willing to do that? And how do we find funds for that? But if you're not, then if we can find funds, would you be interested in having a county manager? I just think there has to be somebody here to look into all these things we're talking about and be engaged in those things on a daily basis. The health department, they have people that write these grants. I can tell you right now, and it's not gonna be there forever. There is a lot of money out there that I hope that I can help find that will help this county and help improve the industry and the work, the jobs for the people. But if there was somebody else that would look at these things also and be looking at them on a daily basis, I just think there's an opportunity, especially right now for the next 3 to 4 years, to bring some additional things to this county. And so whether it's a manager or whether it's additional time for you guys to spend at it, or if there's another way that we can do that. And I don't need an answer right now, but I'd like you guys to think about that a little bit and tell me if you are or you're not interested in anything like that that would provide an opportunity to spend more time working on the things that we're all talking about here. That's in the last paragraph of the letter I gave you guys, so, or that we gave you. And I'm just curious if there's a willingness with the commissioners here to look at those opportunities. And if you don't know the avenues to get that done, then maybe we can, but it doesn't do us any good to do that if you guys are not willing, and what that willingness is, what part of that would work for you guys.
That's why I became a commissioner, but I was wanting to make a difference, and I'm willing. I mean, what things, I mean, other than initiating a building permit, what other things do you think we could work on?
Everything that we talk about here, getting around the county, looking at these roads, looking at, knowing that I'm building a big shop onto my house right now.
Oh, you need help the Department of Revenue get those?
All those things, anything that we have, just knowing what's going on in the county. Somebody that would look at the grant opportunities that are coming up through this infrastructure money that could help the county. How, there is a lot of funds out there that we can, if we do the right things, that we can bring in to help bring industry back into the county. I'm gonna do some of that.
Mm-hmm.
But if we had somebody, and if there's funding for another person, and if there's not, let's find funding. Again, it doesn't do any good for me to go around and try to find any of this stuff if the commissioners don't believe it's a worthwhile effort. I just think we have to do something to just continually, I sit here a year from now and say we still can't afford anything. To me, just isn't an answer. I just think that we need to be actively engaged in trying to make things better. I don't know how to do that.
I personally think a county manager is not a bad idea. It's somebody that goes out and does all this legwork, because we've just touched the surface with a question. Our very first meeting, we told you that we'd start out with a list of questions and bring other people's concerns forward, and that's gonna grow. That alone, I mean, obviously it's got Dawn fairly busy, looking things up that, that we've brought forward so far. It's brought a lot of discussion to you, and so you guys got a lot of answers to answer. So I think what Willie's saying is just not enough hours in the day to do that, plus the other county business. So if you had somebody out there who was a manager who's out there doing that legwork for you, bringing these things back to you, summarized for your decisions, just makes a lot of sense to me.
And I'm sure there's other counties around that have a similar schedule like you guys do that.
Some counties are part-time like we are,
Right.
some are full-time.
But others are full-time. How did they fund, or how was the decision made that they didn't need to be full-time, or who tells the county, or who decides for the county whether you should be part-time or full-time? Don't you vote on that like every 10 years or something?
With the
The
questions of
organization
the
of the-
charter and nonpartisan,
Yeah,
Believe
that's
so.
when it's decided.
it's a commissioner decision,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah. But it's a vote by the county.
by the commissioners, yeah.
No, it's a vote by the county, I believe, by the
You can
voters
do
of the
it,
county.
you can do it that way as well, yeah.
Because I think that's how it was decided to
You
do
probably
it,
did
as
it
a
that way.
part-time here.
Do we
What
set
I
that in the
remember.
resolutions? Because when we talk about commissioner hours in the resolutions, is that a time for a vote, or?
I think so.
Every year, you're saying that we can vote to be
No, I think,
full-time or
I don't
part-time?
think it's every year, I think you can do it every so, I have to look the statute
Yeah,
up.
I think it's
Okay.
every 10 years.
Yeah, I think it's 10 years, yeah.
So they would need to know when they voted, what year they voted for part-time.
Yeah,
Many years ago.
So, and that's great and wonderful if you guys could vote,
Yeah, because
but
like you
that doesn't
said,
necessarily fund more time.
Right.
no, well, I mean, we're salary, and like you say, we meet one day a week, but we are on other boards, and some of those do include economic development, housing. You know, I've gone to a couple of those housing ones, but unfortunately, it seems like it's all talk and nothing gets generated. But that's where the grants are explored, and that's where the ideas and what's available. So some of the boards that we're on, we kind of do that. You guys probably don't see it, because, you know, I'll go to Polson for one, and Dwayne might go to Missoula for one. But, so that is kind of being done, but, you know, when you're dealing with government, when we have only 7% land and we're relying on the government to help get some of these things going, that's, you know, like on the housing thing, we only have that little trapezoid of land left in our name, really, basically, out there, and it came up about housing. St. Regis is surrounded by Forest Service. In fact, every year we have to enter into a permit for the other half of the park, because it's in the Forest Service land. We have to get a special use permit. And I was saying, we're a poor county, why don't you guys just give us the land, for God's sake? We've been using it forever and ever, and that's our flea market and our softball tournaments, and, you know, like if we want to put a public toilet on it, we have to have their permission, you know, as part of the use, special use. And so on the housing thing, I stood up and said, you know, we have all this federal land, and we need housing. Why didn't the Forest Service just give us a chunk of land out of the goodness of their heart? And then Mr. Galloway could go and build the low-income housing, and then that other 1/3 that we can contribute, it would be much more affordable for us, for the people. I mean, what's to say they can't help us out? They're the ones that have all the land, but
What's the answer?
the
Did they
Forest
give you an
Service,
answer?
the Forest Service wasn't there. Everybody else kind of looked at me like I was crazy. I'm like, well, that's elephant in the room to me. Sanders County was there. They got just as much problems with the Forest Service land that they can't do anything with either. But, you know, St. Regis is one example where the whole town is surrounded by good, flat, buildable ground that's owned by the feds. You know, I think around Alberton, a lot of it's straight up a mountain, but there are areas where we could probably benefit from them if they're not gonna manage it, if they're not gonna let us cut timber on it, if they're just gonna let us look at it, then give us a piece to help us out.
State Forest could be doing some of the same thing.
Yeah, we have much less of that, but DNRC is actually a pretty good partner. They usually don't have to go through all the brouhaha and the same kind of NEPAs and stuff.
Well, they just made an agreement for the fire hall. Is there a way to do that for community housing on a piece of state ground?
Maybe if, I don't think they have the right location for some of their ground, but
Well, there's some state pieces around there.
and I don't know if they'd be able, depending on where it is, because they have that requirement for managing the timberland for schools, but like I said, I could approach them, they'd be much more agreeable to it, I imagine, because they are a much better partner.
Could you guys let us know when this 10-year period would come up again, when that's gonna come up for a vote, so we can maybe help in that process, or?
Well, I guess it's eligible. I would bet it's eligible now, because it's been 3 part-time
I'd
commissioners.
have to ask Kellyanne, because it's kind of an automatic thing, she has to put on the ballot. Do you want your commissioners to be partisan or nonpartisan? Do you want it to maintain a general powers authority for the commission, or a charter form of government? And then, but I haven't seen on there forever.
I remember seeing it on the ballot, but I can't remember.
Yeah,
It hasn't been that long.
how recent it was.
Just get it close. Because I think they have to do the.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a good place to stop. I do have a public comment if we move into that one to go.
Sure.
Are we ready?
Well, we got 6 minutes, but we might as well, because
Okay.
that's why I'm starting to sign checks, because we're supposed to get stuff done before.
All right.
So we're having a big county Christmas party, so yeah, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to remind you guys that, the cemetery road needs to be plowed once in a while. I don't think it needs to be plowed every time we get 2 inches, but it's been plowed twice, the very first 2 snows.
Yeah,
I plowed it over the weekend. I had to borrow Ken's machine to plow it because there was just too much snow for me to plow it side by side.
last Saturday, Sunday, you had to plow
I
it?
plowed 2 days ago.
Tuesday, or Wednesday, I don't really know.
And they've been out there a number of times. And I'm not complaining at this point, I'm
You're just saying it's not on
offering
the
a
regular,
reminder.
it's not on the regular list routine yet, is what you're saying?
It has not, it got plowed twice right at the beginning. The first two snows actually plowed it, and appreciate that. But it
Will you have to die to get a plow because it's to the cemetery?
There you go.
Well,
That's the county
it's
stipulation.
plowed now, clear to the cemetery, anybody can drive there, I took care of it, but I would like to make sure, and again, I'm not saying they need to drive down there when we get 2 inches of snow, but if you get a couple of them, then they should drive in there.
I got a question, do we use my equipment?
Yeah.
Is that cost share?
Yeah.
Can we tax that?
I'll let the foreman know that that's part of the routine, you don't just reports and that's it, you gotta get the cemetery.
Yeah, that'd be great. There is 3 of us out there paying taxes now, landowners.
Oh yeah, even your chicken coop?
I don't have a chicken coop. We do pay pretty substantial taxes now, more than I've ever paid here in Monroe County, so.
I haven't got mine yet, really.
I pay those willingly, actually. I'm glad that I can contribute, but,
I did see him out there looking around, and I went out and denied that I lived there. I'll find out who lives there for you.
and I know there's an issue with turning around, but you know, in all seriousness, if they took one pass in there and backed up and took another pass in there, it's probably 10 minutes at the very
They
least.
got reversed.
So it's 300 yards, so. Just a thought, you guys, they can do it however they want.
So we're in the public comment now?
Yeah, go ahead, we'll let it go a little early here since we're running short on other time.
Okay.
Julie, I kinda cut you off, did you?
Oh, that's okay, I got quite a few over here. I guess I'll start with the obvious. So, what was the purpose of asking them if they're involved with Lance? What was the purpose of that? I guess I'm confused as to what difference it would make them being here to improve our county.
And it actually, that's not exactly right. It's that Lance came in on their time. And so when they asked to be rescheduled, I needed to know if that was part, if he would be part of their time. That's all that was. That was the purpose, scheduling meetings.
Regarding this policy of having a request for agenda, at what point are we gonna address the elephant in the room now? Because I have been told by you for 6 months that there's always a problem with the website. There's always a problem with the website. There's always a problem with the website and the email. You haven't answered my emails for 3 weeks now.
You know what, Juliet, that's because I'm no longer getting county emails. So that would be why. I get MC Commissioner emails.
At what point are we gonna address that the website is not working?
I can tell you right now. So what the issue is typically is that they're very slow in posting our stuff. So I had started posting agendas because I could do that right away. And then November 7th, there came a glitch somehow in our agendas and our minutes. And our main web person was on vacation. When he got back, he was gonna take a look at it. And right now, what they're telling us is that our website is so old, it can't be supported. So we have a meeting scheduled for the 28th of December to see what can be done to bring the website up to speed. It's a very, very expensive endeavor, but it's one that we do continue to work on.
How much are you paying a month for that or a year for that? And how much are those services going to increase in order to update the website?
Well, that's
Is
a
it
good
worth
question.
looking at perhaps a different service that does a better job?
Well, we chose this service at the time, 2 years ago, I believe, and it could be time to take a different look. We do know that our website is very, very old, and so it doesn't seem unusual that they would tell us that it's in trouble age-wise and needs to be upgraded.
Kind of their job.
But we have to pay for that.
I understand that, and when every nickel and dime in this county counts, why are we spinning our wheels on something that's not getting done? And then we've got more policies that will have to be updated. your policy about being able to get on the agenda. That's not even a public policy that I can look up on the county's website.
No, but it is very clear when you call to get on the agenda, so that no mistakes are made. We ask all people to go ahead and fill out the form and get it back to us. Roman, I'm not sure that needs to be a policy, does it?
Where does it say this, Dawn? It doesn't say it
But when you call
anywhere.
the commissioner's assistant
It doesn't
tells you.
say to
I'm not
call
sure
the
that it needs
commissioner's
to, but
assistant.
we're gonna defer to the chair and ask him if it needs to be in policy that they fill out that form.
How about in public? The public doesn't know to call the administrative assistant to
But how
get
else would they
on.
get on the agenda? You have to
That's
call whether
exactly
there's a-
my point. You're not informing the public on how to follow your rules
Oh, but that
to get
is-
on the agenda. And no one knows where these rules are unless we pick up the phone and try and call Renee. But it
Okay,
doesn't
so-
say that on the website to pick up the phone and call Renee.
It's always been that you had to contact a commissioner's assistant to get on the agenda. I inherited that process. The form came about later so that we don't make a mistake and so that it's very clear what you want to get on the agenda about. Roman, you would have to address when that became part of your system. No, your system of calling to get on the agenda, period. Whether there's a form or not.
I don't care when it was made. I'm asking you why the public doesn't know about it now, and why are we skirting this issue? Why isn't that form on the website so that it can be emailed directly to
You know
you?
what, Julia, we can put that on the website, that's not an issue for us. We have not had problems in the past. People have called, how do I get on the agenda? And we tell people how to get on the agenda.
We've never had problems in the past, but Ken himself was told this is the policy, and he didn't even know that. So you're saying
But I
it's
talked
always
to
been, but it's
Ken.
not there in
Ken
public.
never, I have never known Ken to try to get on the agenda, and Ken and I did talk about that. Ken does know to call the commissioner's assistant, or to call one of the,
And so everybody else should know this by osmosis? I don't get why you're avoiding the question of
I'm not-
why can't you let the public know these policies, period?
So Juliet, as I said, we'll put that on the website. Here's the form to get on the agenda. In the past, our county has known to call the commissioner's assistant to ask, how do I get on the agenda?
You just blew it off again, Dawn. You said the county knows. Guess what? There's more people in the county that don't know because they haven't been
I'm
here.
telling you that in the past, that's how it's been done, and we're very happy now to put it on the website.
Okay.
Very happy to do that. Now again, because there are some glitches, it's not gonna happen tomorrow, but we will put it on the website.
HR. Who's HR? Because you contradicted yourself last week in the meeting. You said you were HR, you said Renee was HR, then you said you were.
I was HR, that is true, and Renee is now HR, but I'm training her still. I was HR, indeed I was.
Some of the statements you made were stated as HR. I did XYZ.
Because I did.
No,
When
we
I
were
was HR,
talking
I
about
did.
current, not the past, not before you became a commissioner. It was very confusing last week
So
to
let me
keep
clarify.
track.
I am so happy to clarify that. I am a commissioner now as of October 7th, and then we hired Renee to take over commissioner assistant, HR, safety coordinator, board health secretary. But I am training her still because I'm the person who was HR. And so it is my job to train her.
So, Ms. Burley, you had a comment?
I just ask that the commissioners please listen to the constituents, and try and act on it, not just sit up there and nod your head. This is old news, but 7 years ago I came to you guys saying, hey, you're spending too much money. I was a one-man show. I called each one of you, not you, Dawn, you weren't here then. And you were given raises right and left, you were doing a lot of things that I could see, you remember, I don't have to go into detail. And a few months later, we were upside down by $475,000 in our budget, and you guys had to lay off people and you were scrambling. you called me, you apologized for not listening. These people that are coming to you are business. Kenny and I have been in business a long time. I don't know any of you that have run a business. I know the county isn't a for-profit business, but it's still the same idea. Money comes in, money goes out. And sometimes you have to think outside the box to get more money in here. And a lot of times I just see a nodding in the head, or you roll your eyes and you blow people off. I want you to listen to these people that are coming and talking to you. Getting Willie in here is a good idea. Not that we're the smartest people in the world, but we kept a viable business here for 28 years. So when we're coming to you and saying something, I truly, truly want you to listen. I don't want to be blown off. I know that's a little rash, but it's what it is. And I like the support of somebody here filming these things. There's people in the West End. I work up there at Women Timber 2 days a week. I get a lot of people through that door every day. I hear a lot of comments. One of them is they really like to be able to see this. A lot of them do not have the resources to come to these meetings. They're on icy roads coming down that canyon. And I think it's really protective of you guys. Everything's filmed. There's no questions about what went on and who said what. It's all cut and dried. I like to see this. I mean, I know you probably don't have the money to pay, but if there was something somewhere to pay this gentleman or this lady, fine, so be it. But I think it's a good idea to have it. So the people in this county, up Petty Creek, up at the far end of the, Alberton, don't have to drive in here to sit here. They're all very interested, but some people just can't do it, or they're elderly. On the icy road. So I think it's really important that we do have somebody filming these and the constituents can see what's going on.
And we all agree with you on that, Kathy. We like the YouTube ourselves.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Yeah.
Last week's meeting got almost 300 views in less than 7 days. That tells you how much this county does want to be involved.
The other point I have, I'm hearing a lot out in the county is, how do you justify Roman being at Mako the amount of days you are when we've got some grave issues here with the legal proceedings against the county attorney's office? I know it's probably a feather in your hat to be there, but I just want to ask you, do you feel like you're not giving the county 100% by being gone for a time?
Well, I've only missed two meetings. The timing was such, so, and I know I'm gonna be gone for a meeting in January, but I don't intend to be absent a whole lot, or just the initial startup. A lot of the executive board meetings I'm on, we do on Zoom now, so I don't travel. But the first time I was absent, I went to Helena, and it was elected officials training that week.
What will it do for the county, your position with Mako?
I'm hoping, so in January I go to Washington DC, and I'm hoping that just the things we're talking about, that our situation here is, and many counties in Montana, is such that we are not having the ability to be heard strong enough to help control things that really affect our economy and our people here. And I think a lot of the problem is that people just don't know, especially at the federal level. So if I can go and have an interaction with somebody on a committee or in Congress or in the Senate to help them, maybe they'll remember, and maybe when they do things like vote on SRS or PILT, they'll know that that really is important to us, or start letting us log it or manage it or do different ideas. Like you were talking about, think outside the box. Right now, we're just looking at this federal land doing nothing with it. There is no looking outside the box. It's just kowtow to the grizzly bear and the hikers and the environmentalists. What about the people that live here? So I'm hoping that I can use a voice in such a way that people realize that we have to fish or cut bait here. We can't just go on living on the welfare dole of PILT and SRS. Let's get something going in this town.
Are you scheduled to appear in front of a committee or the Congress or anything like that that will really, really impact? I mean, you can go and rub shoulders with all these goons in Washington DC, but
There's a chance I'll have to testify as part of Montana Forest and Counties. Commissioner Chilcott is the chair of that, but yeah, they tell me that they have certain things that they're going to want me to speak on, and they usually pick somebody either the chairman or the president, whatever, based on the subject or the topic, or both be there. So, yeah, I have no idea yet what totally to expect. Same thing in Helena, I'll be going to Helena a little bit, but hopefully that's during the week and I'm not missing Fridays here. But the same thing, they'll want me to speak towards legislation that could potentially harm the counties in terms of changes in Department of Revenue or changes with the entitlement share money that comes back to us from the state for taxes. There was a move a session ago where they wanted to take away some of the money the counties receive for funding public defenders. So years ago, just like when we used to have our own assessor, the county used to have to pay for the public defenders for people that couldn't pay for their own attorneys. The state took that away, and now they're saying that they don't want to give us as much money because they think that we're driving up the cost of the public defender's office. Well,
Do you think it'd do better to beat on the doors of our representatives and our senator that, represent our county, to get them on board with us? I mean, I know you can go to Washington DC, but
in Helena, I think that if you can beat on their doors, but if I went to Lewistown and beat on that guy's door, like you said, they nod, it's much easier to be there when it's time to vote, to influence them right when they're gonna vote. Not if I went to them at Halloween and said, hey man, when they get there, there's a lot of pressure for them to be a team player and do what everybody else is voting for, but it's a little bit easier to dissuade them or persuade them when you're looking them in the eye across the podium if you give testimony, and then they have to go and vote in committee, and then, or more importantly, when they vote on the floor. I think that it is important to be there so that they can see who you are and what you represent, but that's just my opinion.
And that's in January, you know?
There'll be several times, I don't know all the dates yet, but the first time I go to Helena will be at the front end of the session in January, so they know who we are, who Mako is, who I am, and I'll probably have some other commissioners, past presidents with me. So then those new representatives, Denley knows who I am, but there's some people that don't, so then when I return again on an issue that might be affecting counties, they remember. But in January 10th is when I go to Washington DC, and again, I don't know what that agenda looks like for if I'm just gonna meet people or if there's anything being debated or
Who pays for all of your expenses when you go?
Mako does. There's no cost to the county.
And
So regardless of who,
state taxpayers are paying for it, okay.
regardless if I'm the president or if the guy from Rosebud County is the president, somebody,
I'm just wondering,
yeah, the whole Mako pays for those guys.
through
Yeah.
our state taxes.
Correct.
My last thing was, property sales in this county. A house 2 or 3 years ago that was $150,000, I watch Realtor.com every single day in this county. $150,000 assessment on a house done 2 years ago. The house sells for $4.25, and there is like $275,000 more assessment coming on that piece of property. Take that times 1%, those people's taxes go up $2,750. How is that helping our county? Because we've had so many sales in this county. Is that revenue coming in, boosting your budget and helping it?
From the past meetings, we thought that it would, revenue assuring us that it would. But 2 years ago, the IFG appealed and got their taxes reduced, and we actually saw a shortfall, and our mill value went down instead of going up. And then this year, we got hit again, revenue granted a tax break to Northwestern Energy and through their BPA lines through here. And we
They
saw,
don't have to go through our tax appeal board.
they did not with the,
They don't have to, right? Is
Well,
that
I
what
don't
you're
know if they
saying?
don't have to, but they didn't either time.
Did you guys fight that aggressively?
it was
The
already done.
IFG deal was done before we even knew it.
Yeah, we got the call and we screamed and yelled and jumped up and down, and it's too bad it's already done.
They're assessed like the railroad is.
Yeah,
It's a
central,
unitary system for those big things down the Helena, the rail line, those things are done that way, so is the power company. But to answer the rest of your question, you'll find one attorney in Montana, the county attorney for 4 of the last Mako 8 presidents, and that would be me. This is one, Barron before him, Todd Devlin, and also Mike McGinley. What I'll say to you is, you can question people being gone or not. It's one thing in the legislative session to say, I am here. It's a different thing when I am here on behalf of 56 counties, which is the whole state of Montana. So in terms of the things that affect us, in terms of what we can get, or what we can not have taken away, because there's two objectives there. One is what else they can add that does us some good, but the other part is a lot of what Roman gets to do is stop them from raping, plundering, and pillaging us and taking stuff away. So it both fall. So the other part is, once that happens, the other thing you get is this whole information institutional memory pool out there. So if you want to know about Todd Devlin, who Roman knows from the time there, who was the national expert in pills, 852-0019, that'll get him. And he'll help us whatever he can do. So what Roman's getting is this incredible institutional pool of people who've done it. So we just took the library at the county and multiplied it times 20. That's what it does. So people who question, does it do you any good? It does us a ton of good.
So I can come back when his term is over and say, what did this do for Mineral County?
And this is the thing it did, but we also have that institutional build up there.
I get that.
So, and that is incredibly invaluable.
I get that aspect of it. I'm just.
And it's huge, because it really changes the playing field a lot. And I just want you to know for sure, that's the equation. And when Roman was talking about it, I said, look, I've done 4 of the last 8 now, which is amazing in those counties, but huge benefit. I've never seen a downside to it except he's gone. And I told the other 2, you guys are gonna have to step up. And I said that to Dwayne and I said that to Don. And they get it. They knew it when they took it off. So they're not afraid to do it. And then the county attorney's office steps up too. And that's fine.
I appreciate your.
Hope that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to comment. I do think it's a great idea to have a video somehow, just because, for one thing, I can't make it down, especially because in the next 4 months I won't be able to, but I really appreciate being able to go back and hear Kenny and when they were here 2 weeks ago, and that's, I wasn't able to make that from the start, and that, it really does help, and I think there are people around the county, I know it's not a, there has to be a little bit of money spent out, but put out for it, but I think that's good responsible. Everything we do in Helena is recorded, committee meetings and everything, people can go back, and whether they agree or disagree, but they at least see what's really going on, and I think that is important. Back to what Captain was saying is, for Roman being involved, what I get on the state level, 2 sessions ago, they were trying, when the oil started going down, they wanted to come at our timber money, even though we don't get much timber money. And I think he can pull in the western Montana value. It's not just Mineral County, but how important. Another issue, even the wolf issue, people over in the east don't understand that. If you can bring that personal touch in from the county commissioner, but being the Mako president carries even more weight on that. I mean, they really pay attention. And the idea of going back to Washington, D.C., I know Carol Brooker was pretty involved up in Sanders County and went back to Washington. And, you look what's happened in Mineral County, the fact that we have the Superior Ranger District has more activity going on. And that's partly because of the local involvement, but also what Roman can do and what Carol did can help push that a little bit from the national level. And I know we got to get, there's things that have to change on the national level to get that back. The PILT money, and I know Danes has been trying to work on this to get, since the population of Missoula, they get more money and they stop the logging. And I think those are the little things that can help. Back on the state level, a few years ago is to put a few more people to work for DNRC so they could set up STORM, the Good Neighbor Authority. And that takes a little speaking on the local level to say, this is how much we gain from Good Neighbor Authority and those kinds of things. So I know if they can try and schedule meetings so he doesn't miss the ones here, I understand that part of it, but there again, maybe even by making the recordings, he can understand what people are putting in. But
Or attending a Zoom even, when he's gone.
and that's the thing, we do on the state level, everything, if you can't make it, you can actually testify by Zoom. And it really,
we've seen the benefits of that, but as far as, what Roman can do as Mako chair it's a pretty, prestigious appointment. And it can really help our community, I think, just because you get a little more bite into, he understands the PILT, he understands that, the resources of Mineral County are being overlooked by the Forest Service, and I think, you know, being in that position, he has a lot more impact of what he says. So I think it's a good thing. I know it's.
Yeah, I get the idea and the concept and everything.
But I mean, if there's a perception, Kathy, that I'm doing it
I'm
under
just-
my cap, I'm doing it because I still care. I mean, I grew up here,
Oh, I know.
and Harvey and Kenny were working in the woods and great guns.
Yeah.
I feel blessed to have had a good job and have a good retirement, and I want my friends and neighbors to be able to still live and thrive here. I'm not doing it because I think I want a feather in my cap. So if anyone really believes that, I'd be willing to resign my position as Mako president, because that's not why I'm doing it.
I'm just telling you what's out there on the street. I talk to a lot of
Oh my
people.
gosh, people think that about me?
Well, just that you're gone away from here. You're taking time away from the county.
But it's because I wanna help the county, not because I wanna neglect it.
You know, if I might add to that might be another reason to have this video, another reason to have Zoom.
Zoom, so you
People
can still
understand
attend.
what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
I mean,
People understand that you are, or what Dylan said.
Yeah.
Yeah, to zoom in at least. I mean, how can you be effective with just two? And don't you need three sometimes to vote on certain things?
No, a quorum is two, so as long as we have two, they can conduct business.
You don't need a quorum.
That is a quorum.
That is a
That is a
quorum, yeah.
And then back a little bit on that part of the revenue, I called right away when I found out what they've done in Granite. And I talked to the director, and there is not an appeal process for counties like there is on the local process. And he did say, well, we probably should have consulted because they were, should I say, got a little bit of BS in it. And they lowered the value lower than they should have. But there isn't really a appeal process and they've already done it. But I also stopped a week and a half ago in the office and I said that I'd be glad to see somebody and said for the county commissioner and answer all the questions. I said, you might be on the hot seat, but they said that they'd be glad to do that. So that can happen.
Because I know
Yeah,
for
like-
28 years we paid the taxes and sometimes we were behind on it at that mill, but we stepped up to the plate and paid our, more than our fair share, I'm sure, of those guys are getting by.
Denley, what happened to the process of, so there was a time like when the VPA taxes got appealed, you know, and we fought that. That was tied up for years, 3, 4, 5 years. What happened to that process? I mean, do we not have a right to protest that anymore? Who took that away?
Basically, what they said is the county, it goes to the state level and the state makes the decision. You know, like, on the local level, they say, no, that's the since the locals can.
You're talking about residential taxes versus centrally assessed, centrally assessed.
So if you have an appeal on the local level for your own taxes, then it goes to the local approval.
Right.
The state doesn't do that. So, and I don't remember back, you know, EPA when they made a change to how they have to take it to court. And that may have been just setting up the initial tax.
Yeah, I know those first years of that were tied up
So there
forever.
might have been an involvement there with the initial. That was just the point.
I think the video thing close like and just puts things straight if they hear it, if they can watch it on video. People aren't making assumptions based on what somebody says or some Facebook comment or something. Go with the facts, look it up. It's out there. So I think that would be beneficial to
Well, I thought that the newspaper, Monty asked me why I wanted to be a Mako president, and I thought I kind of said that in the newspaper, but I guess not everybody gets the paper either. That's basically to see if we can get something going around here and help this county and others like us. Yes?
So I guess it begs the question of, Wally just informed you today of what your powers are and bringing it to our county, what you guys could and could not do with our sheriff. you're the president of Mako, but you didn't know this? And that is a little concerning to people.
Because I still don't know it. That, like Dwayne pointed out, go ahead.
Yeah, so if we called Mako right now and talked to our general counsel, they would argue with him on that. They would.
about
We
perception.
could probably show you an email to that effect.
Yeah.
Because that question was sent not too long ago, and that was their reply.
Not to
There was-
disparage Wally, but
there was
he's one
nothing-
attorney with one
It sounds
opinion.
like there wasn't a conversation with him though until today.
It's about interpretation and attorney's perception of the law,
Yeah.
because everybody else has a different opinion.
But you guys stood on a
It's not
law
what-
that
it's not-
didn't exist. You stood on a law
No,
that
it
said he
doesn't.
only had to be here one day a month.
Actually, that statute doesn't even say he has to be here one day. So
Don't even-
there, that statute has been upgraded, and it does not say that the sheriff or any elected official has to be here for any amount of time.
Elected officials don't accrue any sick time or vacation time, they don't get paid hourly, they're an elected official, and the statute doesn't even require
doesn't,
them to
right,
be there
it does
at
not
all.
mention any
As long as
days.
the office is running efficiently.
And they still supervise their staff, which that may be through the undersheriff, because that is the chain of command there. So really, all laws, all statutes are being followed.
Except
Now-
you can cut their budget.
Right.
You get the people out of the office, they're extra, and they have to be there to make sure that office runs smoothly.
Right, right.
And Ken gave us a great statute today. Okay, so tell the sheriff you want him here every Friday. That's perfect.
Yeah,
So
I
they're,
think
they're,
it's somewhat a matter of interpretation, you know. You
It
have
is.
different lawyers saying two different things, you guys have to make a decision and run with it. And you say, well, I'm gonna support my county attorney, and if Mako's gonna stand behind it.
well, they do always say, they'll give you an opinion, and then they will say, we defer you to your county attorney. And we do go over everything with Wally, and this discrepancy I have discussed at length with Wally. And then you heard me say today, I want to sit down and learn more about his side of it.
Sure.
But
Well,
we,
I think that's fair. I mean, we all learned something here today.
Yeah.
Really about the statutes, you know, I looked up and I can read the statute, but Wally quick to point out there's more statutes
Yes.
going with
Yeah.
it, which actually support the other statute. So if those statutes are really out there, then if some attorney from Mako was made a quick review and said, here's what I think, but check with Wally type thing, then that's what we have to do on this and make that decision. So I think we went under the assumption that what Mako was telling us was right.
correct.
May or may not have been right.
Because in the past, we've had elected officials running amok. The clerk recorder's office, the county attorney's office,
Yep.
the sheriff's office now, and you guys had no control, other than cutting their budget,
Mhm.
you know? And if that's what it takes to make them come to work, we're paying them every month. And if they're laying at home watching, you know, Netflix,
You know, also Kathy, I want to tell you that another suggestion given to us by Mako that I learned at the elected official training, then put it on your agenda and let the public come in as the commissioners discuss the issue at hand. And that way, it's not us, you know, necessarily disciplining them, but it's being brought to the attention of the public.
Yeah.
Yes, and I personally really like that particular idea also. But there's just so much that goes into it. Nothing is black and white, cut and dry.
yeah, I agree. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good luck at Maple.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All
guys.
right,
He's
thank
got
Ken.
something good for us.
Not gonna stick around
I'll
for
try.
lunch? Not gonna stick around for lunch?
You know, I think I'm gonna go put my leg up.
And
Looks
still
like it's hurting
babysit.
Yeah, it's starting to get there, you know, if you sit for too long, if you get up and move around, it's better.
Is that just a temporary thing, Ken, or?
Pardon?
Temporary, oh, surgery. You
Yeah.
didn't cut it with a chainsaw.
No, I had a knee replacement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's come along well.
All right, you'll be the bionic man in no time.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know about that, I'm too old for that, so.
Okay.
I tried that one.
Thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Well, they have problems at night and stuff.